Magical World War I. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, Dawn Fire, Cat Shooting. The man with brown hair and gray eyes rushed out of the restaurant, but he could not find Charlotte anymore. He turned the knife in his hand and put it into his sleeve. He smiled and was about to say something, but the next second, there was a roar like a dragon, and a magic armor-breaking bomb was fired from a distance. Charlotte fired this shot with resentment in her heart. He was just a math teacher. After traveling through time, his highest life goal was to marry a beautiful woman, get promoted and make a fortune. Why was he being hunted down continuously? In Kilmainham prison, the new warden, Magruteller, had selfish motives and forced him to report Middleman. He escaped, but Magruteller was still unwilling to give up. He spent a lot of money to hire people from the Wild Horse Detective Agency to hunt him down, revealing a series of misfortunes. He killed 8 Wild Horse detectives, and was bribed by the president of the Wild Horse Detective Agency, Aubrey Tootin Atwood, to hire an assassin from the Orc Assassin League. The trouble suddenly became endless. Magruteller. You deserved to die, Aubrey Tootin Atwood. I will definitely kill you, destroy your fiery horse detective agency, and destroy your family, your descendants, and your entire clan. Although Charlotte is a time traveler, she still has some old Chinese traditions in her bones. Yes, she loves to destroy the entire family of her enemies. The brown-haired and gray-eyed man reacted very quickly. He shook his body and left a residual image in the air, and he dodged the magic-breaking armor-blasting bullet. The magic-breaking armor-blasting bullet hit the ground, making a deep pit as big as a basin. The remaining force of the bullet drew a deep groove of 7 or 8 picometers on the ground. The assassin's eyes tightened, and he suddenly ran, as fast as a cheetah. Charlotte missed a magic-breaking armor-blasting bullet and was about to shoot again, but when she saw the assassin's running speed, she knew that she had missed the opportunity. He put the anti-space long-range rifle into the alchemical staff, threw it casually, inserted it into the nearby wall, and revealed the blood rose. Although Charlotte was not a combatant, he made the most correct choice in an instant. Facing the brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin, the anti-space long-range rifle was temporarily useless, and the alchemical staff had no combat value, so he could only abandon it temporarily in ambush for a backup move. The lethality of the blood-sucking hand axe was limited. If the opponent's speed was similar to his, he could still play with long-range attacks, but the speed of the brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin was even faster than him, and he couldn't pull the distance at all, and he didn't have the time to distract himself to operate the blood-sucking hand axe. So Charlotte chose the swordsmanship of the Asilo family. His insight ability was fully activated, and the blood rose made a slight vibration after being infused with bloody glory, and he was so nervous that he couldn't be more nervous. Charlotte had never chosen to confront the enemy head-on. Although this was the most perfect tactic he came up with in just a few breaths, how could he be relaxed in the face of such a powerful enemy? The brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin took a step and leaped into the air. The flying knife in his hand was unpredictable. Charlotte also used the sword to fight back. In 1/10 of a second, the two sides exchanged 7 or 8 moves. Charlotte had a light agility technique and the secret amplification created by Protagoras. His speed was still slightly inferior, but he had the insight ability. His magic rapier was longer than the opponent's flying knife. He could predict the enemy's attack with every sword, and he actually blocked every sword of the brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin. The brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin said softly, "Asilo's Angel Thorn, you don't look like a vampire." Charlotte was not as leisurely as his opponent. He was still not satisfied with his full effort, so how could he dare to distract himself to answer? The magic rapier in his hand circled continuously and fought with a flying knife in the hand of the brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin for 17 times. The whistling of the blades and the blades became one piece, like a piece of music. The swordsmanship can be used so elegantly, which is not Charlotte's style, but the style of the Asilo family. This Angel Thorn sword technique is divided into 12 movements. Charlotte can only use the first movement now, Dawn Fire. The brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin originally planned to assassinate a 4th level. The intelligence he got was slightly outdated, but it was just a piece of cake. He didn't even make a plan. He originally planned to break into number 58, Elysée Field Street, and kill Charlotte at home. When Charlotte went out for dinner, he changed his plan and followed her to kill Charlotte in the restaurant. What likes to kill his lover in front of the assassinated person? It's just a psychological tactic he plays. He likes to watch the target of the assassination betray his lover in order to survive. When he cuts the other person's throat with a knife, he says a few more words: "I am a person who advocates love. If you would rather be killed to protect your lover, I might let you go," watching the other person gradually despair, extremely regretful, emotional and personality collapse. Well, it's also a very perverted hobby. He didn't expect that Charlotte was even more perverted than him. Could he kill Mendelman? Not to mention Duchess Misu, even the 7 leaders of the Orc Assassins League combined might not be able to deal with this Grand Duchess. In fact, Charlotte also overestimated this assassin. Anne is the daughter of an imperial earl. How could he, a mere assassin, have the courage to assassinate her? Even if someone placed an order, the Orc Assassins League might not dare to accept it. The two fought fiercely for dozens of moves, with magic rapiers and flying knives fighting hard, and then they separated and secretly used secret methods to recover their energy. The brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin chuckled and said, "I underestimated you." Charlotte took a deep breath and said, "You are a mid-level, not a high-level. You just know at least 2 superpowers." Charlotte was frightened by this assassin, and had always mistakenly thought that his opponent was a high-level extraordinary. But after fighting for so long, he realized that this brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin was not as strong as he imagined. This brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin had a way to conceal his breath, so he was able to deceive in sight. He also had an ability to speed up, but although this ability accelerated quickly, it could not last long. Otherwise, he would have been killed by the opponent long ago. How could he have fought for so long? The brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin was slightly surprised and said, "Your observation is very sharp, but unfortunately, it can't let you escape the fate of death." Charlotte smiled and said, "That may not be the case." A few hundred meters away, where Charlotte threw the alchemical staff, 3 clever cat cubs climbed over the wall. Under the inspiration of psychic magic, these 3 clever cat cubs worked together to pull the anti-space long-range rifle out of the alchemical staff. The 3 little guys were panting with fatigue, but they refused to rest. Instead, they used the nearby wall to set up the anti-space long-range rifle. The 3 young cat cubs hugged each other, meowing, and their 6 little paws pulled the trigger with all their strength. The demon-breaking armor-breaking bomb pierced through the air like a divine fire, spanning hundreds of meters and heading straight for the brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin. This veteran assassin from the Orc Assassin League leaped up and pounced on Charlotte. Chapter 77 Leopard Hunt. The martial arts learned by the Orc Assassin include many fierce killing moves such as high leaps and pounces. In mid-air, at a critical moment of life and death, he sensed the crisis, flipped his body, and changed direction in mid-air against all odds. The magic-breaking armor-blasting bullet flew past his shoulder and shot into the distance. Before the brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin could rejoice, he felt a pain in his waist and ribs, and blood gushed out. Charlotte succeeded in one move, but before she could further expand the victory, the brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin suddenly broke free from the blade of the blood rose, let out a long and shrill howl, and suddenly increased his speed and fled towards the outer city. Charlotte communicated with the 3 clever cat cubs. After all, the 3 little ones were born not long ago. After firing the shot with all their strength, they fell down tiredly, sticking out their little tongues, lying on the top of the wall, and no longer had the strength to send the anti-space long-range rifle to him. She could only watch the assassin escape with regret. There are too many spells that can conceal aura and sneak attack. It's hard to guess which one it is, but the spell that can suddenly speed up can only last for a short time each time. It's also commonly used by orcs. It should be cats hunting. This ability is not as long-lasting as the agility spell, but the instant burst is very powerful. If it weren't for the fact that each burst can only last for 2 or 3 breaths, I'm afraid it won't last long. Charlotte also keenly discovered in the battle that this brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin would make a few sarcastic remarks after each round of fast attack. He initially thought that the opponent had a bad temper and liked to tease the opponent, but soon found out that it was not the case. The opponent just couldn't continue the violent storm of attacks. He seized the moment when the opponent recovered his breath and commanded 3 clever cat cubs to sneak attack and counterattack at the same time. Sure enough, he was only a little bit away from killing the opponent. Charlotte watched the assassin disappear and said to herself, "What a pity, He jumped a few times and found the 3 clever kittens lying on the wall. He first put the anti-space long-range rifle into the alchemical staff, and then took the 3 little ones into his arms, smiling and saying, "Thanks to you, please prepare delicious food." He first went to the restaurant to pay the bill and gave 20 centimes to compensate for the damage from the battle. Then he chose another restaurant. In addition to ordering a new meal for himself, he also asked for the most tender raw beef for the 3 clever kittens and asked the kitchen to cut it up and send it up. This restaurant did not have fruit wine, but beer as the accompanying wine. Charlotte took a sip and her brows relaxed slightly. The beer in this restaurant had almost no bitterness, was refreshing and dry, and was very suitable for drinking. While eating, Charlotte watched the clever kittens happily eating beef, and couldn't help but smile a little. He didn't expect that the 3 little creatures would actually make a great contribution in this battle. If it weren't for the 3 clever kittens firing that shot, there would be no way to force back the terrible assassin. Although this brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin is also a mid-level extraordinary. His strength is much stronger than the previous assassin and the former warden Mecklenburg. Charlotte finished her dinner comfortably. The 3 clever kittens also had round bellies and lay on the dining table meowing. Charlotte called the waiter of the restaurant and said, "Your beer is good. I want 3 barrels. Please send them to me later." Charlotte picked up the 3 kittens, left the money for the meal and beer, and walked back to number 58, Champs-Élysées. He greeted Mrs. Nancy who was waiting on the first floor and said, "I bought 3 barrels of beer. The waiter from the restaurant will deliver them later. You carry 2 barrels to the basement and bring the other barrel up to me." After Charlotte gave this instruction, he went straight to the 3rd floor. He put down the 3 clever cat cubs, fed them some water, and let the little guys play by themselves. He went to the terrace facing the Lucavero River, pulled over a lounge chair, and looked at the scenery on the other side of the river while taking out the cat mask. This extraordinary artifact can transform into the images of 6 different creatures and randomly draw a skill of the transformed target. It is only limited to those who have had contact with it. Wearing it can improve a small amount of agility. It is also an identity certificate for the Orc Assassin Alliance. Charlotte came into contact with a brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin today, so she was a little curious and wanted to know whether the cat mask could transform into the other person's appearance. Touching the thin face with fingers, 6 different images emerged one by one, 3 of which were ordinary people. The skills extracted by cat mask were cooking, driving a carriage and night patrol. Charlotte's consciousness moved slightly, and one of the images of an ordinary person was replaced by the brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin. At the same time, more than 10 kinds of flying knife techniques were transmitted to his mind. Charlotte smiled slightly. He didn't expect to extract this skill. It is indeed a pity that Cat Mask can't extract the target's superpowers and can only extract skills, but if it can extract the basic target's superpowers, this strange item would be too powerful. Flying knife techniques are naturally not superpowers, but a skill. It is purely composed of skills, proficiency, talent and the mysterious knife sense. The brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin has worked hard on the flying knife technique. Not only does he have the throwing skills, but also the skills of close combat with a short flying knife. Every move and every style reveals thousands of years of hard work, which is a pure killing skill. In terms of sophistication and complexity, the flying knife technique of the brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin is far inferior to the Angel's Thorn of the Oscillo family. The Angel's Thorn is not only an extraordinary secret method, but also an extraordinary swordsmanship, which is very famous in the Old World. There are 6 or 7 versions of peerless swordsmanship in the Old World, including the 5 sacred swordsmanships, the 7 divine swordsmanships, the 12 overlord swordsmanships, and so on. Each version has the Angel's Thorn of the Oscillo family. Each version also has the Robin family's eagle swordsmanship. Yes, it is the Robin family of Sallows' Robin, and also the Robin family of Zimmerman Axel Robin. But the flying knife technique of the brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin is more practical. It has very exquisite response plans for actual combat, assassination, street fighting, close combat, and hasty battles. This is a typical assassin's swordsmanship. Charlotte didn't have a throwing knife, but he had a dagger. He put on the cat mask and flew the dagger. After the dagger flew away, he urged the blood flame to summon it back and had a lot of fun. He didn't like this dagger taken from the previous assassin. Charlotte tried it many times and found that the blood flame could also manipulate ordinary extraordinary weapons, but it was far less flexible than blood-sucking weapons, so he didn't use it in several battles, but this dagger was perfect for practicing throwing knives. After practicing for more than an hour, Charlotte seemed to be a master of throwing knives. With all kinds of fancy moves, the throwing knives could always hit the target accurately. After taking off the cat mask, the throwing knife technique disappeared. He tried to continue throwing the dagger and found that although the throwing knife technique had dropped significantly, it was not as bad as he had imagined, and the accuracy was higher than expected. Chapter 78. If senior sister is here, I can kill you with just one move. Charlotte practiced for a while and put on the cat mask again. With a strange mask, he felt like he had the best instructor. He could experience the most sophisticated techniques of throwing knives in close combat. Each knife was honed and perfected without any flaws. Charlotte believed that as long as he was willing to put in some effort, he could truly master the art of throwing knives. Even if he took off the cat mask, he could still use it skillfully. I guess I have a talent for shooting and throwing. This long-range attack mode, Charlotte played until it was completely dark. He put away the cat mask and the assassin's dagger. He was very satisfied with his practice. He expected that in more than 10 days, the technique of throwing knives could be used in actual combat. However, he also found a shortcoming in his knife throwing. He always had to use blood flame energy to control the knife and recall the knife. The blood flame energy also had a distance limit for controlling weapons. If the distance exceeded, the connection would be lost, resulting in not being able to use his full strength, and the knife would be much slower. Of course, the solution is also very simple. Buy a batch of ordinary throwing knives, and don't plan to recycle them at all. The blood flame gas can increase the power of the throwing knives and increase the speed. A better way is to customize a set of extraordinary throwing knives that can automatically return. Charlotte is reluctant to spend this money, and there is no need. He also has an anti-space long-range rifle. Charlotte practiced throwing knives, half because he thought this skill was interesting, and the other reason was, when he used the blood flame gas to manipulate the blood rose and the blood-sucking hand axe, he could increase many skills. The three other images that the cat mask can transform into, one of them is naturally Aubrey Teutonic Atwood, and the skill drawn is, shooting. The president of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency has much better shooting skills than Charlotte. The shooting skills that Charlotte practiced in college are just to extinguish candles within 20 steps. The shooting skills of the president of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency can shoot down birds in the sky. For Charlotte, Aubrey Teutonic Atwood's pistol skills are amazing and admirable. The other two were strangers to Charlotte, and the skills they extracted were night gun skills and sword skills. Charlotte only watched them briefly and completely lost interest. Although his martial arts skills were not very good, he had learned orthodox academic sword skills in the National Academy and University. The night gun skills and sword skills of these two people were common goods, not worth mentioning at all, and there was no need to practice. It was already late at night, and Charlotte did not go back to the room. He just closed his eyes on the recliner and soon seemed to fall asleep. More than an hour later, Charlotte still did not move. A figure quietly swept up, and as soon as the three throwing knives in his hand were revealed, there was a gunshot. The brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin wielded the knife like lightning, ding ding ding, and cut through the bullets continuously. He exclaimed softly, "You have noticed it a long time ago? I was hiding on the side." Charlotte was not interested in answering. When he was playing with the throwing knives, he turned on the inside. And he didn't expect that it was so coincidental that he swept the assassin lurking on the roof. Insight will automatically turn on when encountering danger, but this assassin has supernatural powers and can perfectly hide his murderous intentions, so insight cannot give a warning in advance, but if he actively turns on insight, he can't hide it. Charlotte deliberately waited for him to come. He also knew that ordinary bullets could not hurt this assassin, but the anti-space long-range rifle was too long to shoot secretly. After firing the bullet, Charlotte dropped the Magnum hand shuttle in her hand, jumped up, and shouted, "Senior! Let's attack together." The brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin was shocked. He knew the name of the Empire's first rose. Mecklenburg was not just famous for her beauty. She was a genuine high-level extraordinary, with a swordsmanship and unparalleled ruthlessness. The assassin swung his flying knife and fought with Charlotte for more than 10 moves. He was about to retreat to recover his breath, but he didn't expect that a blood-sucking hand axe flew at him. He barely turned his head to avoid it, but the blood-sucking hand axe suddenly jumped and hit the back of his head with an axe. Charlotte was originally very afraid of the assassin's super speed, but after guessing that the opponent's ability was leopard hunting, she was not so cautious. Although leopard hunting speeds up quickly, it consumes too much energy and cannot last long. After each round of attack, you have to recover and regroup to fight. Originally, Charlotte didn't dare to be distracted, but now he can be at ease and boldly use the blood-sucking hand axe to attack. The brown-haired, gray-eyed assassin was hit by the blood-sucking hand axe. Although he felt dizzy and swollen, his intelligence was back, and he shouted, "There is no middleman at all." Charlotte smiled and said, "Of course. If I were here, I would only need one move to kill you. Why should I make an extra move?" The assassin was furious and launched a violent attack. Charlotte countered his moves. In his hands, the swordsmanship of Asilo once again played the prelude of the 12 movements of angels, the fire of dawn. With the advantages of insight and magic rapier, he firmly guarded his body. The two sides fought for more than 100 moves. Although Charlotte was always at a disadvantage, she was much calmer than the last battle. Half of the reason was that he had just learned the flying knife technique a few hours ago, and habitually used the swordsmanship of Asilo as a comparison. Although he could not improve his own combat power in such a short time, he understood more about swordsmanship. The swordsmanship of Asilo was known for its weirdness, cruelty, unimaginable changes, and its speed as fast as lightning and thunder. Although Charlotte had experienced several battles in a row, he did not understand many subtleties of swordsmanship at all, and just used it according to the inheritance. At this time, after fighting with a brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin for a long time, a flash of inspiration suddenly came to his mind, and his swordsmanship had many changes. A magic rapier was like a flame, and it suddenly brought a little charm of the morning fire. The brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin swung 6 swords in a row, swinging Charlotte's magic rapier, stepped back, and rushed to the roof. Charlotte had just thrown out the blood-sucking hand axe when 2 flying knives shot at him. He could only use his sword to knock away the flying knives, and his control of the blood-sucking hand axe was weakened a little. The brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin easily dodged the blood-sucking hand axe, and disappeared into the night after a few jumps. Charlotte changed to an anti-space long-range rifle and jumped onto the roof, but even inside could not find the enemy. It was obvious that the assassin had fled far away. Charlotte sighed. He didn't want to be targeted by such a powerful assassin. But the opponent had the ability of lurking and panther hunting, which was too difficult to deal with. He either severely or lightly injured the opponent twice, but the assassin from the Orc Assassin League still escaped. According to the rules of the Orc Assassin League, if we kill this assassin, they will continue to send people. How can we solve this problem? I have no way to get rid of this assassin organization now. Chapter 79. 5 Longberg Street, Alcatraz, Chelsea Detective Agency. Holding the anti-space long-range rifle, Charlotte pondered for a long time in the night. He also hid the anti-space extraordinary rifle in his collar like Lord Leo, went back to the room to get all the magic-breaking armor bombs, and did not go through the main door. He performed the cat-changing technique, transformed into a young and clever cat, and went straight to number 5 Longbayo Street in Alcatraz, Chelsea Detective Agency. He didn't know what was there, but he knew he had to go there. How could he always be assassinated and never fight back? Alcatraz is a middle-class residential area and is not far from Picardy. Many middle-class people in Alcatraz like to go shopping in Picardy. There are many roads connecting the two areas. Charlotte transformed into a young and clever cat and jumped continuously on the roof like a flash of lightning. After he performed the cat-changing technique, he only had insight and agility. Although his spirituality remained the same, he could not use bloody glory because it was sealed by the cat body. In other words, after performing the cat-changing technique, he had no combat power except speed. Charlotte didn't care. After all, a cat running around on the roof in the dark is less noticeable than a living person running around. A few minutes later, Charlotte looked at the road sign. He had already arrived at Longbayo Street. Following this street, he soon saw the sign of Chelsea Detective Agency. In Strasbourg, all detective agencies will hang signs to facilitate people seeking help to find the right detective agency. It was already late at night, and most of the windows of Chelsea Detective Agency were dark, but the detective agency, which should have been silent, had lights on the second floor. Charlotte relied on her transformation into a clever cat and her light figure. She struggled to jump onto the roof of Chelsea Detective Agency and found a chimney to get in. The Chelsea Detective Agency's office is a small 3-story building, but there are not many rooms, only 3 rooms on each floor. Charlotte walked around the 3rd floor and found nothing that was annoying or anyone, so she went down the stairs to the 2nd floor. He arrived at the door of the house with the lights on, lay down quietly, and heard someone talking in the room. "Frederica, be gentle." "I was already very gentle. How did you get into such a mess? Were you hit by a dying counterattack?" "No. Then how did you get injured like this?" "The opponent is a master of swordsmanship, and the sword was poisonous and fierce, a bit like the swordsmanship of those vampires." "Yes, no. There was no dying counterattack. The opponent was not injured, only I was injured, Algernon." "What are you talking about? You were injured, but you didn't kill the target." Algernon, with brown hair and gray eyes, spread out his hands, his ears with fine fur on his head drooped, and said, "I didn't expect the target this time to be so difficult. I stabbed him twice. Once I was stabbed and forced to retreat. This time I was hit by an axe." He showed the girls in the room a big bump on the back of his head caused by the vampire's axe. It was round and big, and full of blood. The girl couldn't help but exclaimed, "Have you been sent to assassinate a high-level extraordinary person? This intelligence team is getting more and more unreasonable. Even the basic data investigation will be wrong." Algernon sighed and said, "It should not be high level, nor mid-level. The information says it is 4th level. Although it is not very accurate, it will not exceed 5th level at most. It's just that he practices bloody glory." The girl called Frederica is a typical cat-ear girl with a pretty face, a slim figure, a pair of big round ears, and green eyes full of enthusiasm and vitality. There are some faint dark spots on her healthy brown skin, but she is not a catwoman, but a real leopard girl. Frederica couldn't help but say, "Bloody glory? That kind of useless supernatural power? There aren't many people practicing it in the old continent anymore, right? After all, no great empire allows random killings. If you can't kill people randomly, practicing bloody glory is as slow as a turtle." The only country that doesn't care about killing ordinary people is Byron, but the group of vampires in Byron hate bloody glory so much that if they find someone practicing it, they will sentence him to death without any forgiveness. Algernon whispered, "His bloody glory practice is indeed not high, but he has comprehended the blood flame and angel's thorn. This guy's an expert swordsman with terrifying combat power. He has a terrifying intuition that can see through the changes in my swordsmanship at any time and counterattack with the most restrained moves, and this person is extremely cunning. The second assassination was because he deliberately set a trap and waited for me to assassinate him, and he almost blew my head off with one move." Algernon was too embarrassed to say the details. After all, it was not an honorable thing to be fooled by the simplest scam. Charlotte stretched her back and thought, "So this guy's name is Algernon. It's time to kill him. Let's kill the orc girl too. Although she's innocent, I am innocent too. I hope that killing these 2 guys can temporarily cut off the tentacles of the Orc Assassins Union in Strasbourg and delay the time for them to send the 3rd wave of assassins, or I can set a fire, burn their account books and other things." Charlotte thought about how to kill the 2. The brown-haired and gray-eyed assassin Algernon was stronger than him, and the strength of the other girl Frederica was unknown. If he failed, he would definitely not be able to resist the counterattack of the 2 together. Kill Frederica first. Charlotte made up his mind, exerting his strength with his 4 claws, and the whole cat flew into the air. The cat turned into a handsome young man in the air. He pulled out the extraordinary sniper rifle from his collar and got into shooting position before landing. The moment he landed, he decisively pulled the trigger. The magic-breaking armor-blasting bullet penetrated the door of the room, blasting a huge hole in the door. Charlotte fired a shot, feeling a little bad, because he could not see the girl through the big hole in the door. Missed. Charlotte did not hesitate, and put the anti-space long-range rifle into his collar. The whole person bounced up instantly and rushed straight to the 3rd floor. As soon as he bounced up, a straight and slender thigh kicked him hard on the ground. If Charlotte had reacted a little slower, this blow would have broken all his ribs. The leopard girl Frederica twisted her slender waist, bounced up, and shouted, "Die!" In response to her, a hand axe broke through the air. Frederica was in mid-air, but she was so agile that she seemed to be able to fly. She dodged the flying hand axe by leaning sideways, and was about to grab the axe handle. The hand axe suddenly changed direction as if it had life, and chopped at the wrist of the leopard girl. Frederica's wrist flexibly turned, and the hand axe that could turn was slapped away. The blood-sucking hand axe spun around, and with a whistling sound, It also rushed to the third floor. Chapter 80, The Real Leopard Hunt. Although Charlotte forced the leopard girl Frederica to retreat, she was also extremely shocked. This beautiful girl with a pair of green eyes was even faster than Algernon with brown hair and gray eyes. If he did not have the ability of insight that covered the entire number 5 Dragon Castle Street in Alcatraz, he would have been kicked to the point of vomiting blood as soon as they met. I don't know what race the guy who assassinated me is, but he is definitely not a leopard man. This leopard girl is using the authentic leopard hunting. The burst speed is too fast. Charlotte just rushed to the third floor and saw Algernon with brown hair and gray eyes. He showed a warm smile like the sun and said, "Good morning." Algernon couldn't help but cursed, "Psycho, it's night." Charlotte popped out the blood rose, and the magic sword pointed out 12 cold stars in an instant, covering Algernon's whole body. She didn't forget to explain, "I'm afraid you won't see the sun tomorrow morning, and you will have regrets when you die. That's why I kindly ask you good morning." Charlotte used the fire of dawn to the fullest and forced Algernon back with one move. He stood up high, and it was too late for him to find a window. The leopard girl Frederica behind him would catch up at any time. Once the two enemies joined forces, the situation would be over. He directly broke through the roof and fled to the street. As soon as she smelled the fresh night air, two murderous intentions locked onto her. Without any hesitation, Charlotte collected the blood rose and transformed into a young and clever cat. With her small body, she jumped into the chimney of a nearby building. The next moment, Algernon and Frederica broke through the neighbor's window and accurately determined the location of the stove, and joined forces to catch the cat. Charlotte relied on her insight and agility to get out of the house under the attack of the two enemies. The two people and the cat began a crazy pursuit and escape. Charlotte climbed onto the roof of a house, released a cat transformation spell, drew out the anti-space long-range rifle, and took a shooting stance. Algernon and Frederica had just lost sight of Charlotte and felt a crisis. Almost at the same time, they jumped in two directions, and the magic-breaking armor bombs passed through the night sky and shot into the air, like a dazzling firework. After missing the target, Charlotte immediately put the anti-space long-range rifle into her collar, transformed into a clever cat again, and jumped into a nearby alley. Algernon and Frederica chased after her, but lost sight of Charlotte again. Frederica said bitterly, "He must have some other superpowers, otherwise he wouldn't be able to escape so easily every time." Algernon also felt that the two top assassins of the Orc Assassin League had chased and intercepted Charlotte for half the night and still failed to catch him. This guy must have other superpowers besides the blood flame and angel thorns. He pondered and said, "It will be difficult for us to catch him tonight." Frederica was also a professional assassin. She knew that in this situation, the best thing to do was to withdraw from the battlefield and look for another opportunity. Assassins should always hide in the dark and should not fight head-on. She nodded and said, "Let's leave Strasbourg first." Algernon nodded in agreement. The two of them simultaneously used the panther hunting and ran away for several hundred meters. Charlotte regained his human form. When the two assassins slowed down, he was moved, but then he shook his head and didn't even take out his anti-space long-range rifle. The two were in a non-combat state, and their breathing speed was very fast. They quickly accelerated again and swept a few hundred meters. Such a long distance and such a fast-moving target, with Charlotte's fairly average and excellent shooting skills, it was just a waste of precious magic-breaking armor bombs. Charlotte followed the two slowly until he saw them disappear into the night, and then turned around and went to number 5 Longbayo Street in Alcatraz District. Since he had already made a move, it would seem a bit of a loss if he didn't touch anything. He broke into the Chelsea Detective Agency again and searched it carefully. He didn't find any cash, letters or contracts, but only a batch of weapons, dozens of pistols. This is understandable. The assassins need to be concealed when they make a move, and pistols are the most suitable weapons. However, what surprised Charlotte was that there was no third person in this detective agency. He thought there should be at least 7 or 8 staff members here. Charlotte packed up all the valuable things in the detective agency and took them to number 1 Falcon Street. He would not take the things back to his home. Then he set the detective agency on fire. He didn't know whether the two assassins would come back. Although there were no extraordinary people in the patrol army of Lucavero district, they were numerous after all, and they could still be very useful in battle. Charlotte had not come to work for several days. His presence in the middle of the night surprised his subordinates. Although the patrol army was not very good, they still had basic military qualities and had colleagues on patrol. Charlotte asked the patrolling subordinates not to alarm others and took the spoils back to his office. He didn't take the spoils too seriously. After all, Algernon and Frederica would not keep the truly valuable things. After throwing the things in the corner of the office, Charlotte lay down on the soft bed in the office. He was really a little sleepy. Although it was not very comfortable, after a night's sleep, Charlotte woke up the next morning feeling refreshed. He washed up in the office, and since everyone was here, he took some time to deal with some official business. What surprised Charlotte was that the patrol troops in the Lucavero district had a big job today. The body of Archduke Ferdinand was to be transported back to the Principality of Behemoth for burial. The coffin had to pass through the Lucavero district, so the court issued an order for the patrol troops along the way to be responsible for vigilance. Charlotte thought to herself, Archduke Ferdinand is dead, and no one will assassinate him again. This trip must be very safe. Should I join in the fun? I have traveled through time and space, and I haven't had a feast yet. Dubin had already arranged this matter, and it didn't matter if he was there or not, but Charlotte was still prepared to lead the team in person to protect the coffin of Archduke Ferdinand, which was also a farewell to the Archduke. After all, he was also born in the Principality of Behemoth, and Archduke Ferdinand was his former master. Charlotte gathered his subordinates together, and he found that very few people skipped work today, and there were more than 180 people who came. The main reason was that a sum of money was allocated for this operation. Charlotte asked a few men to buy some drinks, because they had to go on an escort mission, so they didn't buy beer. Before leaving, more than 180 patrol soldiers had a full meal, and the pistols brought back yesterday were distributed as rewards. Dubin was quite emotional. He was more and more satisfied with Charlotte as a superior. He basically didn't make trouble, and often invited his subordinates to eat and drink together. On Earth, such bosses who don't give bonuses and only use worthless dinners to fool employees are all black-hearted ghosts. In the old continent, such bosses are already very conscientious and virtuous. Chapter 81 Gun Ban. There are gun bans in major countries in the old world. Only soldiers, detectives, nobles, and some people with special identities have gun licenses and can openly own guns. This is why the adventurers recruited by Charlotte used cold weapons when they besieged the 7 detectives of the Lima Detective Agency, because the lower-level adventurers could not get gun licenses and it was very difficult to obtain guns. Charlotte became the leader of the patrol army in the Lucavero district for only a few days, and had not had time to apply for equipment from the Military Affairs and Logistics Department of the Central Government Office. The more than 100 old patrol soldiers who followed Dubin were equipped with rapiers and pistols, but the adventurers had no guns. Fortunately, the gun license is not a separate certificate, but an attachment issued with the patrol army documents. If it is a detective, it will be issued together with the detective's documents. The newly recruited adventurers under his command can legally own guns. Charlotte led the team to the Victory Bridge by the Lucavero River. This is also a bridge connecting the upper 7th district and the outer 15th district. The Victory Bridge itself is a small fortress, which can be closed during wartime. After waiting for several hours, it was almost afternoon when a convoy came from the opposite Picardy district. As patrol troops, they spontaneously divided into 2 teams to protect both sides of the convoy. Charlotte followed the team on foot. He went out last night without an alchemical staff, an alchemical pistol, or a magnum hand shuttle. The blood-sucking hand axe was hidden under his coat. He was free with his hands. The core of this convoy was naturally the coffin of Archduke Ferdinand, but in front of the convoy, there was a young noble in his 30s who attracted more attention. He was Archduke Ferdinand's nephew, the new Duke of Behemoth, Franz Joseph. It was he who declared war on South Serif. Behind the convoy, there was another carriage, in which was the South Serif warrior who assassinated Ferdinand. He used an extraordinary pistol and shot Archduke Ferdinand in the chest 3 times, killing the imperial duke on the spot. It is also said that the Archduke was absent-minded and hugged his wife at the time, and did not use fighting spirit to protect himself, so he was killed. In any case, this is a tragedy. Charlotte sighed secretly in his heart. He accompanied the convoy for 2 hours. Seeing that they were about to leave his jurisdiction, this escort mission was about to be completed, and he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Just when he was planning to go to Anne for a date after completing the escort, his insight suddenly opened up. A beautiful girl with green eyes was ready to go on the roof of a nearby street. Charlotte was startled, stopped slightly, left a large group, urged the light agility technique, jumped up to the roof, and approached Frederica in a few jumps. The leopard girl did not flee, nor did she take a fighting stance. Instead, she chuckled and asked, "Are you going to stop me?" Charlotte sighed and said, "Can you get out of my jurisdiction?" He wanted to kill the female assassin, but not at this time. If he started a war at this time, something serious would happen. When the coffin of Archduke Ferdinand left the Lucavero area, he would take action first even if the other party did not take action. Frederica smiled playfully on her pretty face and asked, "What price are you willing to pay?" Charlotte spread her hands and said, "What do you need?" Frederica said quickly, "I heard that you are the chief of the patrol troops in the Lucavero district. If we move the detective agency to the Lucavero district, what policy benefits will we get?" Charlotte sneered and said, "Are you still trying to assassinate me? Are you still asking me for policy benefits?" Frederica said, "The Orc Assassin Alliance has many rules, but as long as they are rules, there are ways to get around them. For example, I can let Algernon declare the mission failed after 3 months. Assassins are an underground industry. Unlike legitimate industries such as detective agencies that can conduct business openly, they cannot be exposed in broad daylight." Charlotte made a big fuss last night and set fire to the Chelsea Detective Agency. The Orc Assassin Alliance can no longer stay in the Alcatraz district. They must move out of number 5 Dragon Castle Street and rebuild a base. Algernon thought it was too difficult to assassinate Charlotte. He was an assassin who was paid, not a soldier who was willing to die. There was no need to risk his life and property for a business deal. He chose to give up the mission and left Strasbourg that night. As the head of the Orc Assassin League in Strasbourg, Frederica couldn't be so carefree and had to clean up this mess. Charlotte was the chief of the patrol army of a large district. Although the patrol army didn't have many masters, as an army that managed the security of the entire city, the last thing it lacked was manpower. Once targeted, Frederica would be very uncomfortable, so she got Algernon's promise to make a deal with Charlotte. Charlotte herself didn't know that he had already played an important role in Strasbourg, and many things had to be promised by him before they could be carried out quietly. He only needed to say a word, and he had a lot of power in the Lucavero district. On Earth, the chief of the city patrol army, in the long-term absence of the chief patrol, is equivalent to the local police chief, criminal police captain and captain of the local armed police detachment, and he has no direct superiors. This kind of card is not enough to deal with an international assassin organization, but it is very easy to deal with a local branch of this organization. Charlotte asked, "Is there no way to completely erase the assassination mission?" The leopard girl said, "I don't know if there is a way to completely erase the mission, but at least no one has succeeded before, and the Orc Assassins Union has never broken this rule. However, the Orc Assassins Union has many old missions that have existed for hundreds of years, so..." Frederica shrugged and said, "You don't have to care about this rule. Organizations that don't know how to adapt have long disappeared in the long river of history. I want to rebuild the branch in Strasbourg, and you have to deal with tomorrow's duel. The third assassin will come in 3 months, and you can start a war with him again." Charlotte sighed and said, "Let's start a war again in 3 months." Frederica got the promise and left quietly. Charlotte watched the convoy leave the Lucavero area, and her men withdrew one after another, and she breathed a sigh of relief. It was obvious that the leopard girl was not here to assassinate anyone, but to negotiate conditions. Charlotte was a little overwhelmed now, so it was better to take a temporary truce so that he could deal with the duel first and then the matter of the Orc Assassins Union. When he was on the roof thinking about miscellaneous things, a huge roar came from afar, and a dark gray fire cloud rushed into the sky. Charlotte stared in amazement at that direction. There should be a convoy transporting Archduke Ferdinand's coffin. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82. A few words before the release. When I first returned to Kidian, the performance of Yijian Fixin was pretty good. It ranked second in the monthly ticket rankings in the first month after it was released, and fourth in the second month. It was quite impressive, and I was going to write it for a while. But as I got older, something happened at home, and I dragged my feet on writing Yijian Fixin for 4 years, from 2015 to 2018. I finally caught my breath, and I wrote and completed both full-time Martial God and Yijian Zanpo Jia Chongdian seriously, and I didn't even take a few days off, and I wrote them almost without any work. When I was writing Wu Zhexian, something happened at home. I wrote half of it and it is still being serialized. Although the books of Xian Hu, Yi Xian Lies Huan, and Cheng Long Xian Hu were started one after another, they were all completed last year. Cheng Long Xian Hu was also written to completion, and I didn't even ask for leave many times. At that time, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I originally wanted to finish Wu Zhexian after finishing Xian Ren. Life must be complete. After 2 consecutive days of double yang, my brain is not working well. When I read Xian Ren, it's like reading a strange book. I have to read 30 to 50 chapters before I can write the next chapter, otherwise I don't know what the story is. This year I recovered a little, but my brain is still not working well. If I continue to write in this state, the quality will definitely not be very good. After repeated thinking, I decided to find my state first, and then write a relatively complete ending for Wu Zhexian and Xian Ren, the one with boundless magic power. The First Magic World War is a book that helps me find my writing state. When I chose this book, I thought about it again and again. First, I am really not good at Western fantasy. The only novel that has some Western fantasy elements is Magic Armor, which is probably the worst of all my novels. For me, Western fantasy has 2 advantages: I will be beaten back to square one, unable to use my previous writing experience to return to the time when I first entered the industry, the longing for the story, the awe of the results, the repositioning of the characters, the refinement and compaction of the text. It is different from my previous writing topics, so I have to change my writing style. Many of the words I am used to cannot be used. I can get rid of the greasiness and wash away the greasy and frivolous feeling of the text, so that the text can settle down and be detailed. Second, fantasy is really an unpopular subject. But an unpopular subject also means that I can give up the anxiety about the results and write wholeheartedly. Third, as an old author who may not be able to continue writing and may leave this industry at any time, my condition is getting worse day by day. It is due to my age and mental fatigue. After all, I have been writing online articles for 25 years. I have been in the industry for 2,000 years and I am too tired. I know that I will not achieve much if I write, and I have the pressure of supporting my family. I don't touch many topics. But there are always some scenery that I want to see. I also ask all readers to walk with me and see new scenery together. I ask for an encouraging first order and monthly ticket. Only with the great support of all readers can I go a little further. Thank you. Chapter 83, The God's Ode, Radiant Magic Circle. Who did it again? Alchemical explosives were used. The black powder technology of the old world is only at the level of World War I on Earth. Since this is a world with extraordinary people, the technology is a bit biased. Alchemical explosives directly push the power of explosives to a higher level, and it has reached the level of high explosives in World War II. The magic-breaking armor bomb in Charlotte's hand is a masterpiece of alchemical explosives. If alchemical explosives are used to directly make explosives, the power will be quite amazing. Charlotte sighed, and in addition to secretly feeling fortunate that the explosion did not occur in his jurisdiction, he also mourned for the victims and the dead. He rushed down from the roof and said to his subordinates, "Doberman, pick 10 swordsmen to go with me, and the rest of you will guard the jurisdiction." Doberman agreed excitedly and followed Charlotte with 10 people. Charlotte did not let everyone go because he was worried that the assassins who made the bombing would rush into his jurisdiction. Once someone escaped from the Lucavero district, it would be a black pot from the sky. Charlotte led his men out of the jurisdiction and saw that half of the street had been blown up. It was black everywhere. The streets were full of broken limbs and incomplete dead bodies. Although Charlotte felt sorry for it, she passed by quickly without staying. However, she also noticed a detail. There were not only rapiers on the ground, but also several broken canes. A thought quietly came to her mind: why don't assassins use guns? Soon Charlotte saw the coffin that was completely blown open. The bodies of Archduke Ferdinand and his wife rolled out. Their gorgeous clothes were covered with the black ash. The bodies of the couple looked like they had been smoked by kerosene, and they no longer had the usual elegance and nobility. Not far ahead, there was a crystal white ball of light. 12 priests formed a magic circle of light to protect the new Duke of Behemoth, Franz Joseph. Although Charlotte was not a student of the Royal Hogwitch University, She had also heard of this magic circle passed down by the Lord of Light. The Radiance magic array is named after Radiance, and is known as the continent's first defensive magic array. It has the reputation of being the chant of the gods. It is said that the great priest of the Lord of Radiance once used this array to resist the full force of the evil god and guarded the Radiance unmoved. Of course, there is no priest of this level in the Principality of Behemoth, and Duke Franz Joseph is not qualified to call on the Radiance priests to be his bodyguards. These 12 Radiance priests are the personal guards of the Emperor Julius VI of the Empire, and their status is extremely high. The Royal Hogwarts University has the prefix of royal because the Lord of Radiance recognizes the authority of the Orthodox Empire and allows his followers to protect His Majesty, the Emperor of the Orthodox Empire. In addition to the empire founded by vampires, the emperors of several great empires in the Old Continent also have Radiance priests around them. However, the Radiance priests of other countries are not graduates of the Royal Hogwarts University of the Fars Empire. Charlotte did not dare to approach, fearing that these Radiance priests would regard him as an assassin and purify him at will. He performed an imperial salute from a distance. Charlotte asked his men to take off their coats and spread them on the ground, and then carry Archduke Ferdinand and his wife onto the coats. This kind of thing, of course, did not help, but it could earn credit. Archduke Ferdinand and his wife were lying on the coats of the patrol soldiers. Any officer who came over would ask, "Who did it?" Charlotte turned on his insight. There was no one alive at the scene except Duke Franz Joseph and the 12 glorious priests. He didn't know whether the assassin had escaped or died together with the bodies of Ferdinand and his wife, but there was no need to chase him. After a long time, the 12 glorious priests finally lifted the glorious magic circle. One of the young priests walked to the side of Archduke Ferdinand and his wife, drew a complicated gesture, and immediately a magical wave swept over, making the bodies of Ferdinand and his wife clean again. He said to Charlotte, "Are you the commander-in-chief of the patrol army in the Lucavero district?" Charlotte nodded, trying to pretend to be sad and angry, and said, "We had just handed over the mission, and then we saw the accident here, so I led the team here to see if we could do anything." The young glorious priest said calmly, "I remember your name, and I will describe your loyalty to His Majesty the Emperor, but please leave now." Charlotte nodded slightly without hesitation, and immediately turned around and left with her men. Dubin couldn't help asking, "We just came here to take a look and lay a few coats for the Grand Duke and his wife. Should we do something?" After returning to the Lucavero area, Charlotte said lightly, "If you want your whole family to disappear, you can go back." Dubin was speechless and whispered, "Not really, right?" Charlotte raised her eyebrows and said, "You can take a gamble. If you win, you satisfy your curiosity and the turmoil in your heart. If you lose, you will be punished." Dubin didn't know what the earth-slaying meant, but from Charlotte's attitude, he could tell that it was not a good thing. He was still a little unconvinced in his heart, but this young 47th level 3rd level sergeant was just young and hot-tempered, not young and stupid, and of course he knew that Charlotte's approach was right. After a long while, Doberman whispered, "Sir, are you really not curious at all?" Charlotte smiled and said, "Curiosity, but I will only go and take a look if the curiosity is free. The curiosity that is too expensive should be enjoyed by those with large families." Doberman looked at the smile on Charlotte's face, and somehow his heart felt cold. It was not Charlotte who frightened him, but the entire empire. As a veteran of the patrol army, he certainly knew that he should not be too curious about some things, because there were many colleagues who died of curiosity than those who died in the line of duty. Charlotte led the team back to number 1 Falcon Street. After waiting for the convoy for several hours and performing the escort mission, everyone was already hungry and tired. He immediately announced that everyone would have a good meal. Doberman personally led people out and bought a cart of food and 20 barrels of beer, not saving Charlotte any money. After the patrol army under his command had eaten and drunk enough and was in high spirits, Charlotte was about to announce the disbandment of the team when a carriage drove into the patrol army's office. Mason led a few people to stop the other party. He had now completed the transformation from an adventurer to a patrolman in his mentality. He asked diligently, "This is the Lucavero District Patrol Office. If you have nothing to do, please leave immediately." The coachman was a rough woman, neatly dressed, skillful, and said arrogantly, "My wife is the chief patrolman of the Lucavero District Patrol Army. Let Mr. Mecklen come over." Mason was surprised and hurried to find Charlotte. Charlotte was also a little surprised to hear that her partner was coming. She followed Mason to the carriage, gave an imperial salute, and asked, "Is it Mrs. Mavis?" Chapter 84 Mrs. Mavis. Although the Fars Empire allows women to work, the traditional forces are quite strong. Unless the husband's family is really ordinary and needs the woman's salary, they will ask the woman to resign. Of course, if the woman's family is quite powerful, women will have more freedom. Charlotte knew very early that the chief patrol officer who was working with her was a woman. Her name is Kitty Mavis. She graduated from Georgia University 7 years ago. Her maiden name is Orphe. She married a high-ranking official of the empire and is now a first-class sergeant major of the 37th rank. Mrs. Mavis has two military identities. One is the chief patrol officer of the Lucavero District Patrol Army, and the other is the Inner Court Guard. She can receive two salaries. So it is quite legitimate for her not to work in the patrol army. In 7 years, Mrs. Mavis was promoted from a first-class sergeant to a first-class sergeant major, and had a formal military identity. She could also serve as the chief patrol officer of the patrol army and the Inner Court Guard at the same time. Her official career was much more prosperous than Charlotte's. Charlotte was a fool, and it could not be considered a formal promotion. A slightly cheerful voice came from the carriage, answering, "It's me. Mr. Mecklen, I still have a position in the palace. This time I came here as an Inner Court Guard to temporarily issue an oral order from His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." Charlotte was surprised and thought, "How does the Crown Prince know me?" He bowed his head slightly, made an imperial salute, and said, "I will obey the order of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." Madame Mavis got off the carriage. She was a tall woman with a heroic spirit that ordinary women did not have. Her facial features were dignified and unique. Although she was a little older, she was still a first-class beauty. After Charlotte traveled through time, among the women she had seen in her life, the one who had the most similar temperament to Madame Mavis was her senior sister Mecklen. The lady said, "You are loyal and brave, and have made great contributions to protecting the health of Archduke Ferdinand and his wife. You are rewarded with a special first-class position, the 34th grade, the 4th level clerk. An additional reward of 5 eco will be given to the patrol troops in the Lucavero district. The documents from the central government office will be delivered here tomorrow, and the cash reward will arrive later." Charlotte was overjoyed and said, "Thank you, madam." Mrs. Mavis smiled faintly and said, "Your Highness, I like your carefulness. Although the Duke is dead, his body still needs to be respected." Charlotte was slightly shocked. Mrs. Mavis's words revealed an important message. "Your Highness, the Crown Prince is at the scene." He hadn't figured out what this meant. Mrs. Mavis didn't say any more nonsense and returned to the carriage. The carriage immediately drove out of number 1 Falcon Street. Dubin came to Charlotte and whispered, "Have you heard of the rumors about this lady?" Charlotte shrugged her shoulders, indicating that she had never heard of it. Dubin immediately became alert and whispered, "After I took office, I specifically asked my acquaintances about this lady. Almost everyone in the palace said that she was the secret lover of His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince." Charlotte thought about the charm of Lady Mavis and thought to herself, "His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has a pretty good taste." Dubin chattered non-stop and told Charlotte all the gossip he had found out. Among them, there was even a rumor that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince took Lady Mavis out of the palace in the middle of the night, and the carriage galloped around Strasbourg at night. It is said that all the guards who followed heard sounds that they should not have heard. Although Charlotte did not know whether these rumors were true or not, she spontaneously had the idea that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is really good at having fun, which was quite blasphemous to the heir to the throne of the Fars Empire. Not long after, someone really sent a small amount of cash, all centime coins, no banknotes. Charlotte opened the purse in front of everyone, and according to their merits, he first rewarded Dubin and the 10 patrolmen who followed him to investigate the situation, and then distributed a sum to all the patrolmen who were on duty. He was a math teacher in his previous life, so of course he knew the principle of monkeys dividing chestnuts. After distributing the money, there was still a large part left in his hand. Charlotte pretended to be pretentious, patted his head, and said with a smile, "I didn't expect there would be some left, so let's distribute it again." He distributed it 3 times in a row, and only then did he distribute 90% of the reward. There were a few hundred centimes left. Charlotte said without hesitation, "The money left in the end can no longer be distributed fairly to everyone. Why don't we buy some beer and continue to drink?" Charlotte's proposal aroused cheers and support from everyone, whether it was the former adventurers or the old patrolmen brought by Dubin. No one disliked a generous boss. Although Charlotte often skipped work, He was becoming more and more majestic in the eyes of these subordinates. After handing the money to Doberman, Charlotte didn't want to continue drinking beer with the patrol soldiers. She called a patrol soldier and asked him to go to number 58, Champs-Élysées, and tell Mrs. Nancy to drive the carriage over. She also prepared some fruit wine, beer, food, clean water, blankets, clothes and other supplies on the carriage. She also sent the 3 clever cats to the Cat and Clover coffee shop and prepared to set off for Machupi. When Charlotte returned to the office and waited for Mrs. Nancy to drive the carriage over, Himengsha, who had short brown hair, walked in. Charlotte saw her and smiled, saying, "What's the matter?" When he joined the Great Axe Adventure Group, he escaped a crisis and later got along well with the 5 members of the adventure group. Although Hanya died in Machupi, the rest of the team members received his preferential treatment. Himengsha took out a pistol from his arms, put it on Charlotte's desk, and said, "I picked this up at the explosion site. This pistol has a strange shape, similar to a revolver on Earth, the Chiapa Rhino. It is silver in color, with sharp edges and corners. The barrel is painted with countless strange runes, and the grip is covered with some kind of animal skin, which is thick and feels good." Charlotte reached out and touched it slightly, and she knew that it was an extraordinary weapon. Thinking about what happened today, where Himengsha picked up this pistol, he also felt a headache. This extraordinary pistol is 100% a weapon used by the assassin who killed Archduke Ferdinand. Himengsha whispered, "I know it can't be cached safely, and I dare not use it. Can you help me change it into money? I want to be promoted tonight, and I need money very much." Himengsha has condensed the seed of power, but condensing the seed of power does not mean that he can break the cocoon and become a knight with fighting spirit. Charlotte also has a power seed, which he obtained from practicing Lamia breathing at Behemoth National Academy. Lamia breathing, also known as water fairy breathing, can replace sleep and make practitioners proficient in water. However, Charlotte has not awakened his power seed yet. Half of it is because his qualifications are not suitable for the knight's path, and the other half can only be attributed to the illusory luck. Himengsha looked nervous. She knew that this matter was taboo and dangerous. Chapter 85 Greed is the enemy of life. This pistol was used to assassinate Archduke Ferdinand. It would be considered an ominous omen in the empire. If you were caught stealing it, you would most likely be hanged. If Charlotte turned against him, she would have no choice but to die. If Charlotte wanted to keep this extraordinary weapon for herself, she would also have no choice but to die. Charlotte pondered for a long time, sighed, and said, "You have never picked up anything. Don't mention this matter in the future, otherwise no one can protect you. As for your promotion tonight, I will do my best to help." Charlotte only made a promise to Himengsha. He couldn't give anything else for the time being. As for whether Himengsha was willing to accept this result, Charlotte had no control over it. This pistol that shot Archduke Ferdinand was a very deadly thing. If there was a choice, Charlotte would never want to touch it. But since Himengsha took it out, Charlotte would not let Himengsha take it away. She would definitely continue to choose to sell this extraordinary object. Once this extraordinary pistol appears and is exposed in any underground black market, it will attract attention. Charlotte will definitely be implicated. Who made Himengsha his subordinate now? Moreover, he was involved in this matter before. To be honest, if Mendelman hadn't protected him, Charlotte would not only not be able to resume her original position, but also be promoted 2 levels. It is hard to say whether she would be alive. The probability of being killed is quite high. After all, this involves the declaration of war between 2 great empires. Himengsha wanted to say something, but finally looked gloomy and prepared to leave the office. Charlotte hesitated for a moment and said, "Don't mention this to Mason and others, otherwise you will kill them." Himengsha was slightly shocked and hurriedly lowered his head and walked out of the office. Half an hour later, Mrs. Nancy arrived, and those who came with her included Anne, Sylvie and the cat elf detective Winnie Arsino. The 3 ladies met at number 58, Champs-Élysées, and all gave up their carriages and followed Mrs. Nancy. Winnie Arsino was a witness to the duel, so she had to go. As for Anne and Sylvie, one was a half-step girlfriend and the other was a cousin, both of whom had the right identities and reasons to watch the duel. Charlotte had nothing to say, so he took the extraordinary pistol and followed the 3 ladies on the road. He put the pistol that shot Archduke Ferdinand together with a diary, hoping that the power of the 2 evil gods could make some divination-type extraordinary people make mistakes. When they arrived at Machupi, Charlotte was going to throw it in the maze fortress. The anti-space long-range rifle that Lord Leo gave him was thick and long, with a huge gun body, and could shoot magic-breaking armor-breaking bombs, which gave it the power to kill high-level extraordinary people. This pistol was so powerful that it could kill Archduke Ferdinand, so it must not be an ordinary product, but Charlotte had no intention of checking its quality, because he was afraid that he would not be able to resist taking it for himself. Greed is the enemy of life. Just like money is the root of all evil. Along the way, Miss N was very quiet, with a resolute face, as if she had made up her mind. Sylvie was worried, and repeatedly advised Charlotte to be cautious and to surrender as soon as she was at a disadvantage. Generally speaking, gentlemen are willing to let go of the surrenderer in a duel. Of course, Charlotte believed that Mr. Alva would not let her go. Being a gentleman was not as important as avenging her brother. Vinny Arsene was indifferent, and did not talk much along the way, just looking at the scenery outside the window, thinking. Strasbourg is more than 200 kilometers away from Machupi. It is too troublesome to convert it into the mileage unit of this world. Charlotte is a math teacher and does not like the measurement units of the old world. Charlotte spent 2 écus to buy this 2-year-old Brabant draft horse. It is relatively tall and strong among this type of draft horses, but its color is a mixture of gray and black, a typical spotted horse. It doesn't look good, but it is very hard-working and can easily pull a 4-wheeled carriage and run at full speed for more than an hour at a speed of 20 kilometers per hour. If it is jogging at the most energy-saving speed, it can run for 4 or 5 hours at a speed of about 8 to 10 kilometers per hour. The draft horses of the old world are much stronger than the horses on Earth in terms of physical strength and endurance, but they are still flesh and blood and cannot run all the time. However, as long as they have enough rest on the road, they will set off in the afternoon and leave Strasbourg. Charlotte and her friends will arrive at Machupi on time tomorrow. Charlotte is well prepared. After leaving Strasbourg, she opened a barrel of beer and invited the 3 ladies to drink. Vinny Arseno was very generous and drank a few glasses with Charlotte, but Anne was so nervous that she couldn't drink anything at all. Sylvie refused to drink at first, but soon she couldn't help but drink too much. Nearing dusk, Charlotte asked Lady Nancy to stop the carriage. They didn't see any villages to rest along the way, but Charlotte didn't plan to continue on the road. First, the horses couldn't bear it, and second, the road conditions at night were too dangerous. He gave the front cabin to the 3 ladies and planned to go to the back cabin. There were no tents in the old world, and the wilderness of the old world was full of dangers. No one would choose a tent as a sleeping tool that had no protection and would hinder a quick escape. Charlotte just got off the carriage and saw a lady standing in front of her. She was about 40 or 50 years old, graceful and elegant, but the clothes on her body also made it clear that she was not a noble lady, but a housekeeper. Charlotte was greatly surprised and casually took out a blood-sucking hatchet, but the housekeeper performed a daily lady's salute and said, "Mr. Mecklin, I am here to take Miss Anne home." Charlotte returned an imperial salute and asked, "Who are you?" The housekeeper raised her voice a little and said, "Anne, the outing is over." Anne of Brittany got off the carriage with a bad look on her face. She said, "Madame Karen, can I not go back?" The housekeeper, known as Madame Karen, shook her head dotingly but firmly and said, "Anne, I can allow the thing to be lost for 3 days. This is already the biggest concession. The Earl will never allow his daughter not to go home at night." Anne struggled for a long time before she said dejectedly, "I'll go back with you." She handed Charlotte something wrapped in newspaper hidden under her skirt and whispered, "Use this weapon when the duel begins. I'll wait for you at 58 Champs-Élysées tomorrow and the day after tomorrow." Aunt Karen nodded to the 2 ladies who also got out of the car, and said to Charlotte, "Don't lose it, the consequences will be serious." Then her whole body burst into dazzling light. She reached out to help Anne, and flew into the air. Chapter 86, Mother St. Karen. In the old world, levels 1 to 6 are low-level extraordinary, levels 7 to 12 are middle-level extraordinary, levels 13 to 18 are high-level extraordinary, and levels 18 and above have other titles. Any knight who has collected all 8 knight certificates can have a holy prefix added to his name, and his status is unparalleled. Other extraordinary professions that have broken through the 18th level can also have holy added before their surnames. The most well-known feature of the holy level is that it does not rely on any extraordinary objects, magic props, or blood secrets, but relies purely on its own strength to get rid of the earth and fly into the sky. This Sister Karen can actually be called Sister St. Karen. So, when Anne saw this sister, She resigned herself to following her back, because even if she resisted, she would still be taken back. Even if Vinnie Orsino, Charlotte, and Sylvie tried to stop it together, they could not change this result. Sylvie watched Aunt Karen and Miss Anne leave, and said to Charlotte, "Cousin, are you under a lot of pressure?" Charlotte glanced at her former fiancé, smiled slightly, and replied, "Not too much. I'm okay." He was a man who had faced evil gods twice. The second time was two again, and only one was a saint. Damn, the pressure is still quite high. Charlotte knew that Anne's family was extraordinary, and that Anne's father was an earl, and that the earl was ranked fifth in the imperial sequence. But she had never had any direct understanding of it before. Even if he met Anne's high-level extraordinary cousin, it didn't matter. He didn't expect that he would actually see the class gap in a nanny. The housekeeper nanny of the earl's family is all saint level. What the hell? Sylvie looked at Charlotte with sympathy. She would never believe that this ex-fiancé was as calm as he acted. She muttered secretly, he should still be an underground boyfriend, the kind that cannot see the light of day. No wonder he has changed so much, huh? If he successfully marries Miss Anne in the future, won't all those little secrets I knew before become big handles? I just need to threaten him to expose the previous scandals. Sylvie hesitated for a moment. She suddenly felt that this ex-fiancé would most likely kill to silence her. In Sylvie Martin's eyes, Charlotte Mecklen has never been a good person. She thought he could do such a thing as killing to silence her. Winnie Orsino watched this scene with interest. She felt that she had seen a bad drama. This drama was so wonderful that it made people want to watch the second act. Winnie couldn't help but hint, "What did Anne leave you?" Charlotte opened the newspaper and saw a news with a very scary headline: Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, and the couple went to the underworld together. The subtitle is, Behemoth Principality declares war on South Serif. Charlotte glanced at it briefly without reading it further. After opening the newspaper, there was a silver pistol inside. This pistol looked very familiar, similar in shape to the Chiappa Rhino revolver on Earth, silver in color, with sharp edges and corners, countless strange runes painted on the barrel, and the handle was covered with some kind of animal skin, which was thick and felt good. He had just seen the same model a few hours ago. Sylvie didn't recognize it. After all, she had just graduated and her experience was not broad enough. But Winnie Orsino couldn't help but exclaimed, "This is the Firewall Silver Rhino, the extraordinary alchemical pistol from the Firewall workshop." It is said that their workshop can only produce 5 a year. Since the 13 alchemy masters of the Firewall workshop worked together to design it, no more than 25 were produced in total. This one should have a number. Charlotte turned over the handle of the gun and saw a 10 on it, which means it is the 13th Silver Rhino produced by the Firewall workshop. Charlotte vaguely remembered that the Silver Rhino that Imangshi picked up was numbered, which was the 5th Silver Rhino produced by the Firewall workshop, and it was produced a few years earlier than the Silver Rhino in hand. The Silver Rhino can also transform various energies such as fighting spirit, blood energy, and magic power into bullets. The effective range is not as far as the anti-space long-range rifle, but it is also up to more than 2,000 picometers. It can also use magic-breaking armor-blasting bullets. It is also an anti-space supernatural firearm. In the newspaper bag that Annie gave, in addition to the Silver Rhino, there are 6 magic-breaking armor-blasting bullets. Charlotte was grateful for Annie's beauty, but regretful that this Silver Rhino could only be borrowed for 3 days. He casually played a few tricks. As a third-rate gunman with a decent shooting level, he practiced these techniques hard in college. The Silver Rhino flew around his wrist and pointed the muzzle at various angles. At the same time, Charlotte also knew one of the advantages of the Silver Rhino over the anti-space long-range rifle through contact. The anti-space long-range rifle only has a space magazine, but the Silver Rhino has an extra psychic magazine, which can store bullets compressed by various energies such as spiritual power, fighting spirit, blood energy, magic power, and evil energy. Because the psychic magazine does not involve space, the energy bullets will not be ejected when it is hidden. And must have asked many people to help. Now there are 35 psychic bullets in Silver Rhino's psychic magazine, which were fired by about 7 people. The properties of each bullet are different, but the power is quite good. Obviously, the people who fired are very strong. Winnie Orsino was also very interested in this extraordinary pistol. She took it and played with it for a while. She also compressed a few cat spirit magic bullets. They were all the most basic cat transformation skills. If you were hit by a bullet, As long as you couldn't resist Winnie's magic, you would turn into a kitten on the spot. Sylvie was also curious and borrowed this extraordinary pistol. However, although her swordsmanship was extraordinary and even better than Charlotte Mecklen, she had not yet awakened her fighting spirit and could not compress extraordinary bullets. The three of them returned to the carriage. Charlotte politely said to the two ladies, "Good night," and got on the luggage compartment at the back. Although it was a luggage compartment, it was also 4 square meters in size. 1 picometer in the old world is equivalent to 1.15 meters on Earth, which is not the same unit as 1,000th of a nanometer on Earth. Charlotte brought enough drinking water, beer, fruit wine and food this time, but the space in the suitcase was still quite large. Enough for him to arrange a sleeping space. Charlotte also brought enough blankets. The wool blankets produced in the Ingrima Empire are of very good quality and much softer than the cheap blankets on Earth. It is said that the wool there is of better quality than other countries in the old world. Mrs. Nancy was also in the driver's seat, wrapped in her own blanket. She was not qualified to enter the front carriage, and it was impossible for her to sleep with Charlotte, so she could only make do with this position. Chapter 87 Duel. The next day, early in the morning, the sun was shining brightly, and birds were singing in the woods. Charlotte rubbed her eyes, got up, got off the carriage, went to the nearby grove to relieve herself, wiped the dew off the leaves, and wiped her face. When he came back, Sylvie opened the carriage and said, "You can get in." Charlotte got on the carriage and saw that the two ladies had already tidied the carriage and were dressed neatly. Only then did she let Mrs. Nancy continue to drive the carriage and head straight to Machupi Fortress. When they arrived at Machupi, another carriage had already stopped in front of the fortress. The president of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency, Aubrey Teutonic Atwood, and another young soldier in his 30s stood together. Aubrey Teutonic Atwood saw Winnie Orsino and greeted her with a smile. Winnie also responded with a standard imperial salute. As for Charlotte, he didn't think it was necessary to greet Aubrey Teutonic Atwood. Anyway, it was already a situation of life and death, so why play any false courtesy? Seeing Charlotte and the others coming, the young soldier stepped forward and said, "I am Harriet Alva, Addison's elder brother, graduated from the First National Academy, and practiced the radiant breathing technique." Charlotte was immediately in awe when she heard about the First National Academy. He graduated from Lemon School and studied at Behemoth National Academy, neither of which was considered the best top schools in the empire. Later, he was admitted to the University of Sheffield, which made up for the shortcomings of education. No one can say that a university graduate does not have a solid academic record. But when he heard that someone graduated from the First National Academy, he was still a little envious. Zimmerman Axelrobin graduated from the First National Academy, which is an affiliated college of the Royal Hogwich University, and the first choice of the graduates is the Royal Hogwich University. Therefore, the First National Academy can also be regarded as a school under the wings of the Lord of Radiance, and students can learn the radiant breathing technique. Charlotte asked casually, "What a pity. Why don't you apply for university?" Harriet Alva smiled and said, "When I was studying at the First National College, I had a good friend named Zimmerman Axelrobin. When I was about to graduate, he suddenly attacked me and beat me up, so that I missed the opportunity to apply for university, even though they were about to duel to decide life and death." Charlotte couldn't help but show sympathy and asked, "Is your friend a serious friend?" Harriet smiled and replied, "If I could collect the certificates of the 8 knights, the first person I would challenge would be him. Unfortunately, he has been sentenced to death by the Empire, and I no longer have this opportunity." Charlotte hesitated for a moment and thought to herself, "In fact, you still have a chance. As long as you commit an irreparable crime and are caught in the real Kilmainham prison, you will have the opportunity to challenge Zimmerman Axelrobin. I just don't know if you still remember this incident after your memory was extracted by the Emerald Secret Scroll." Of course he didn't dare to reveal this secret. Zimmerman Axelrobin is not dead yet, and it is definitely a big secret that cannot be told even if you die. Charlotte now vaguely understood why she was chosen by Menelman to sign the document. She did show her talent and was a serious junior. Sharing secrets was the implicit recruitment of this senior. Later, he performed very well. Now he is definitely a loyal subordinate of the first rows of the Empire. Harriet Alva was very restrained and did not have the slightest impulse when facing the enemy who killed his brother. He waited patiently for the witness to check the weapons of the two and confirm the legality of the documents. He also asked the two whether to cancel the duel, hug each other, and turn hostility into friendship according to the convention. Charlotte agreed on the spot. Harriet Alva showed impatience for the first time and refused to cancel the duel. After a set of tedious procedures, under the eyes of the two witnesses and Sylvie Martin, the two entered the Machupi fortress and began to confront each other in an open field. Charlotte concentrated and sensed slightly. The maze-like Machupi responded enthusiastically. He even learned a piece of information: the number of NPCs in the Machupi maze has increased to 1,321. In addition to the group of adventurers, many beasts that originally roamed in the Machupi fortress were judged as NPCs. In addition to beasts, some monsters, evil spirits, and weird creatures that originally lived in the ruins of the Machupi fortress were also judged as NPCs. The weapon used by Harriet Alva was the standard military knife of the army. As a 41st class 5th level non-commissioned officer, his finances were quite tight, and he often needed help from his brother who was a detective. Of course, it was impossible to prepare any extraordinary weapons. Charlotte used an alchemical cane, which was a magical old scabbard dissolved from the Sherlock Kingdom era. It was made with special wood and its toughness was not inferior to that of metal swords. Both of their weapons were inspected by witnesses, and they promised not to use firearms in duels. Sylvie didn't know there was such a rule. After learning that firearms could not be used, she was particularly worried, and her little face was full of worry. On the contrary, Vinnie Orsino was calm and composed. She always felt that Charlotte should have other counterattacks. Harriet raised her saber to her brow, saluted, and gave a light shout. Her glorious fighting spirit burst out, and with a simple sprint, she crossed a distance of more than 10 steps in a moment, and chopped down with her saber with a force of 1,000 pounds. This slash was not fancy, but the power, speed, angle, and timing were all impeccable, revealing the decisiveness that had been tempered through countless life and death battles on the battlefield. In terms of pure speed, it was almost as good as Algernon using the panther hunt. Harriet did not use any superpowers. Charlotte took a deep breath, stepped back lightly, and gave up Harriet's attack range. The two attacked and dodged, respectively, showing the high-level knight's strong fighting spirit and the extraordinary with superpowers, and the flexibility in battle. Harriet Alva changed her moves and slashed 12 times in a row. Each slash was terrifyingly stable, completely unlike Algernon, who could only sustain a short burst. She said calmly, "If I can get into college and learn the meditation technique of the God of Light." "Mr. Charlotte, you are not my opponent in one move," Charlotte thought to herself. That's not true. If Harriet Alva also practiced a meditation technique of the God of Light and cultivated various supernatural powers, what can he do? Rush into the depths of the Machupi labyrinth and use the power of the labyrinth to deal with this high-level extraordinary person. Charlotte relied on the light agility technique to dodge all the 12 slashes. Harriet didn't care at all. Her face was full of confidence, and she shouted, "I have experienced countless battles in the army, and now I have obtained 2 major knight certificates. Today, please invite Mr. Mecklin to see the proof of war." A bloody murderous aura suddenly appeared on Harriet's body, and a blood-colored military flag was faintly spread out behind her. Chapter 88 Evidence of War. War Certificate. Aubrey Tootin Atwood and Vinnie Arson now exclaimed together. Aubrey Tootin Atwood was also a high-ranking knight. Of course, he knew that the war certificate was the most difficult of the 8 knight certificates to collect. Although Vinnie Arson now was not a knight, she also knew how difficult it was to obtain a knight certificate, and it was even more difficult to collect all the war certificates. Anne's cousin Claire Bridini and Dorothy's brother Abner Sumai were both 17th rank knights, but because they had never been on the battlefield and had never experienced war, they failed to obtain the war certificate, so they were one step away from the saint rank. Charlotte's heart was slightly shaken. He had already used the secret method of the great philosopher Protagoras of the human race, activating the light agility rune on his left leg, gushing out 4 streams of bloody glory, which were injected into the other 4 bloody whirlpools, increasing the speed by 40%, and it was impossible to continue to increase it. Although Charlotte had cultivated 4 bloody runes, relying on insight, blood flame, agility, and angel's thorn, he had a fighting power comparable to that of a mid-level extraordinary, but he was still far behind in a duel with a real high-level extraordinary. Harriet used pure fighting spirit, and he could still rely on agility and angel's thorn to deal with the opponent. The opponent activated the war certificate of the 8 knight certificates. How could Charlotte be stupid enough to continue to fight? He retreated again and again without hesitation, retreating into the ruins of Machupi. Harriet's glorious fighting spirit also changed, and a layer of blood was fatally shrouded. He strode and chased closely. He never thought that Charlotte could escape from his hands. Harriet's saber was magnificent, opening and closing. Charlotte fought and walked, occasionally using blood flame to activate the alchemy staff to attack from a distance, and the battle quickly shifted to the depths of Machupi. As witnesses, Aubrey Tootin Atwood and Winnie Arsene ran together to catch up with the two. Sylvie also wanted to catch up with them, but she had not yet cultivated Dao Qi. Without Dao Qi to accelerate, how could she catch up with the four extraordinary people? Especially among these four people, there were three high-level extraordinary people. Although Charlotte was not a high-level extraordinary person, with a light agility technique and the Protagoras secret method, her speed was not inferior to ordinary high-level ones. Soon Sylvie Martin lost everyone's figure. The girl ran for a while and found that she was lost. She was slightly scared. She shouted a few times, but was afraid of disturbing Charlotte, so she didn't dare to shout again. She searched around, but found that every road was so unfamiliar, not at all the way when she came, and soon she couldn't even determine the direction. Aubrey Tootin Atwood and Winnie Arsene were better than Sylvie, but they didn't last long before they lost the figures of the two people in the duel, and they even lost each other soon. Aubrey Tootin Atwood was an experienced detective. When he was left alone, he suddenly reacted, slapped the ground with his hand, and with the help of the aftermath of his fighting spirit, he sensed his surroundings. He was shocked and shouted, "It's a maze, how could a maze be formed here?" Even if the Machupi fortress was occupied by some powerful monster, it would be impossible to form such a complete maze in such a short time. Aubrey Tootin Atwood was able to form the Fiery Horse Society, and he was a very decisive person. He turned around and ran without hesitation. Although the road ahead was unpredictable, Aubrey Tootin Atwood had a lot of experience in dealing with mazes. Half an hour later, he finally escaped from Machupi. After Aubrey Tootin Atwood rushed out of the Machupi fortress, he looked back, with lingering fears and deep fear in his eyes. Winnie Arsene also quickly sensed something was wrong. Her response was more relaxed than her peers. This was the specialty of cat spirit magic. She used the cat-changing technique and transformed into a desert cat known for its agility. She jumped onto a nearby building and quickly disappeared into the ruins of the fortress. Charlotte had to concentrate on fighting Harriet and had no time to distract herself from manipulating the maze. Although she felt a little regretful that Aubrey Tootin Atwood had escaped, she couldn't do much. Harriet cast a warproof. The blood-colored flag behind her had the function of weakening the enemy and increasing her own power. The blood-stained glorious fighting spirit had a fascinating weirdness. Every time Charlotte's alchemical staff fought with the opponent's saber, the bloody glory in her body would boil over, her heart palpitated, and she felt annoyed. He fought with Harriet again for a few moves, took a long breath, turned around and disappeared. Harriet Albert had been in the army for many years and had experienced dozens of battles. He had developed unparalleled confidence. No matter what tricks Charlotte had, he believed in himself and could cut them off one by one with his saber in his hand. Wherever his saber pointed, the blood-red military flag behind him rolled up and turned into a ripple, and he immediately found the target. Harriet thrust forward and fought hard with the rapier, but was repelled by a powerful energy. He was slightly surprised and shouted, "Charlotte! You actually had your strength?" He chopped down with his saber and shouted, "Even if you have skills that you haven't shown yet, you're dead in this battle." A rapier swung out and then launched a counterattack. His sword skills were fierce, and his blood energy was strong. He was not afraid of the vision of the proof of war. The person who attacked was Lord Leo. Lord Leo didn't know who Harriet was, but they were all Far's people anyway, so he could just kill them. There was no need to ask in detail. Harriet then saw clearly that the person who attacked was not Charlotte, but a noble of Byron. He guessed the truth in his mind and shouted, "Charlotte! You are so shameless that you colluded with the Byron people and became a running dog of vampires." Charlotte urged the bloody glory, suppressed the annoyance of being disturbed by the evidence of war, and shouted, "My real name is Jinan, and I am originally from Byron. You can die at the hands of the Arthur royal family. It is a blessing that you have cultivated for several lifetimes." Harriet cursed Charlotte for being shameless, but Charlotte didn't pay much attention to him. She took out the anti-space long-range rifle and loaded the magic armor-breaking bomb. After all, Harriet was a high-level extraordinary knight. Warning signs flashed in his heart. He hurriedly turned his body. A beam of fire passed by him and shot on the ground, creating a deep pit. Lord Leo took the opportunity to attack several times, killing Harriet left and right, sweating profusely. Both of them were high-level transcendents. Lord Leo was an excellent swordsman and was proficient in the strange secrets of the Arthur family. Harriet had been in the army for a long time and had a strong fighting spirit. Her swordsmanship was sharp and unforgiving. They were originally evenly matched, but with Charlotte watching from the side and a powerful weapon like the anti-space long-range rifle, Harriet was completely at a disadvantage. Lord Leo was very confident that he could kill this powerful human within 20 moves. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89 Some Insignificant Friendship. Charlotte's marksmanship was ordinary. After firing the first shot, she never found another chance to fire the second magic-breaking armor-blasting bullet. He wanted to wait patiently, but the diary in his arms shook slightly, and an idea entered his mind. You can issue the following task to NPC Lord Leo: kill Harriet Alva, reward him to gain more maze permissions. NPC Lord Leo can issue the following task: rescue him from the maze, reward, teach the Blood Clan's mantra. You can issue the following task to NPC Harriet Alva: kill Lord Leo, reward him to gain more maze permissions. NPC Harriet Alva can issue the following task: assist him in killing Charlotte Mecklen, reward, some insignificant friendship. Charlotte pondered for a while, and then he understood what the characteristics of the maze NPC were. As the owner of the Machupi maze, he could issue tasks to the NPC. All those who entered the maze could receive tasks from the NPC and get rewards. The reason why the Machupi maze presents this kind of game style is not because of the maze evil god Agmirus, nor the maze itself, but because of Charlotte, the owner. After the maze is formed, it will take on a unique style and characteristics according to the owner's mind. If it were the real Charlotte Mecklen, the Machupi maze would definitely present an ancient temperament, matching the cultural atmosphere of the old continent, but now Charlotte's soul is Wang Heisheng from the earth. In the memory of this math teacher, the world structure that best matches the maze is those games with detailed and rich content. So after the Machupi maze was transformed, it was roughly gamed according to Charlotte's memory, and there were things like NPCs that were neither fish nor fowl, and even NPC Harriet Alva can issue the following task: assist him in killing Charlotte Mecklen. Reward, some insignificant friendship. Such a weird logic, but it was transformed by the power of the evil god after all, and the core was not a game. Charlotte could not fully grasp it for a while, and could only explore it slowly. Of course, Charlotte would not issue tasks to the two NPCs to let them have more control over the maze. This would be holding the sword upside down and giving others a handle. It is even more impossible for him to assist Harriet in killing himself. That would be pure sickness. The only thing worth doing is to rescue Lord Leo from the maze. The secrets of the 37 clans of vampires are different, and each clan has a fundamental secret. The secrets of each clan are derived from the fundamental secret. For example, the fundamental secret of the Asilo clan is the Angel's Thorn, and the fundamental secret of the Adonis clan is the Blood Flame. The fundamental secret of the Arthur family is the Blood Clan's mantra. As one of the three royal families, the Arthur family is known as the first family of Blood Clan wizards. The Blood Clan's mantra secrets are countless and mysterious. With a secret, the Arthur family has been holy for generations. The 13 strange skills created by Protagoras do not include the Blood Clan's mantra, and Charlotte is really eager for this secret. Lord Leo and Harriet are already fighting fiercely. Neither of them knew why they were fighting, but both of them felt that it was not a big deal, and killing each other was the right thing to do. After all, the two belonged to different countries, Fars and Byron, humans and vampires. There were too many reasons to fight to the death. Harriet had to be on guard against Charlotte's sneak attacks at all times. Every time he slashed with his sword, he had to keep 3 points of strength. He was getting more and more at a disadvantage. He knew that if he continued to fight like this, he would definitely lose. He had to find Charlotte hiding in the dark and kill her, so that he could concentrate on dealing with Lord Leo. He immediately roared and opened another kind of knight's certificate, the Certificate of Glory. In addition to the bloody military flag, a virtual image appeared behind Harriet. It was Salos's Robin, the Fars Empire, the symbol of the god of war. Salos's Robin was one of the founding dukes of Fars. He assisted King Axel to ascend the throne from a commoner, and was famous for his loyalty and bravery. This ancestor of the Robin family also represented the glory of the soldiers. The two knights' certificates appeared at the same time, and the blood-red flag behind Harriet rolled up, sending out a ripple that spread out, and the saber slashed continuously, becoming more and more brave. After sending out 3 blood-red ripples in a row, Harriet still couldn't find Charlotte's trace, and couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Lord Leo fought for a long time and roughly figured out Harriet's background. After all, the glorious fighting spirit is a very popular extraordinary path in the old world. Although the Baron Empire does not welcome glorious believers because of the power conflict with the vampire clan, it is not completely ignorant. Harriet was anxious, but he couldn't help but reveal a flaw. He let out a long whistle, and the rapier in his hand turned into a knight's spear. 2 figures also jumped out of the shadow of his body at the same time. They were the 2 servants trapped in the maze with him. Shanlunchi's spear is a famous weapon of the Arthur clan. It is only when it is transformed into knight's spear that it is fully powerful. With Lord Leo's knight's spear in hand, the blood energy in his body surged and was upgraded to another level. The spear turned into light and shadow all over the sky, blocking every counterattack route of Harriet. Harriet did not expect that this vampire lord would have such means. He had never encountered a high-ranking vampire on the battlefield and had no experience in dealing with it. He tried his best to resist Lord Leo's knight's spear, but he could no longer care about the sneak attack of Leo's 2 servants. 2 brilliant lights flashed, and 2 deep scars were cut on his back and ribs. Harriet knew that the situation was over. He was swept by Lord Leo's knight's spear, spit out a mouthful of blood, and fled to the outside of Machupi Fortress without hesitation. How could Lord Leo allow his prey to escape? He gave a light scold and chased quickly, with 2 servants accompanying him on both sides like shadows. Harriet ran desperately for half an hour, only to find that he couldn't find a way out. He was horrified and wanted to rely on his military experience to find a way out, but he never thought that Charlotte was moving the maze and changing the road. Lord Leo had been in the maze for a long time and knew that there was no way out of this ghost fortress. He was not impatient, but slowly followed behind Harriet and pulled out an anti-space long-range rifle from his collar. He told Charlotte that he brought 2 anti-space long-range rifles. And he was not lying. Lord Leo's shooting skills were much better than Charlotte's. Even when he was running fast, he could still shoot steadily. Harriet's alertness honed on the battlefield made him roll over and hide behind a building, making the shot miss. Charlotte also took out a silver rhino. Although the anti-space long-range rifle had strong firepower, it was far less flexible and convenient to use than the silver rhino. He was quite interested in this extraordinary pistol, but it was a pity that he had 2 of them. One had to be returned and the other could not be seen by the public. Chapter 90 Sorry, I am an unorthodox descendant. Charlotte turned on his inside and locked onto Harriet, who was hiding behind a building. When he was about to pull the trigger, he suddenly felt a little regretful. Last time, he shot an assassin with an anti-space long-range rifle, blowing up half of his body, and he had no chance to absorb his vitality. Harriet is a high-level extraordinary. If I can devour her blood, I may even be able to break through to the middle level. I still have the threat of the evil god. In 3 months, the Orc Assassin Alliance will continue to send new assassins. I must seize every opportunity to improve. Charlotte hesitated for a moment and decided to take a risk. Machupi is his maze, and this is already his home ground. There is no better opportunity than this. Lord Leo did not skimp on ammunition at all, and fired more than 10 shots in a row, forcing Harriet to flee like a rat. Holding the blood rose, Charlotte chose a corner, concentrated on activating the maze, and then used all his strength to stab with a sword. Harriet just dodged Lord Leo's shooting, and with a dive and several continuous rolls, he had just hidden in a corner when a rapier seemed to have predicted his movements and stabbed him in the heart. Charlotte attacked first, and then activated the maze. Harriet's soul was in a state of panic. Although she tried her best to activate the protective fighting spirit, the sword still pierced through the glorious fighting spirit without any hindrance and passed through her chest. Charlotte gave up the light and quick technique with the sword, and activated the rune of the Angel's Thorn, infusing the bloody glory into the other 4 bloody whirlpools, increasing the power of the Angel's Thorn by 40%. The Blood Rose was a rare extraordinary weapon, and all kinds of conditions came together to make it work. Harriet kicked out with all her strength, but Charlotte had already let go of the rapier and jumped away calmly. Harriet reached out to grab the Blood Rose, and when she pulled out the rapier, the red light on the hilt flashed, and it automatically detached and flew into the darkness. It was Charlotte who manipulated the blood flame and took back the Blood Rose. Harriet met the enemy who was looking for Charlotte and killed this hateful enemy. Lord Leo adjusted the angle and fired a shot. Although Harriet dodged, a shrapnel rubbed his lower abdomen, and blood immediately flowed. Charlotte took a deep breath and threw the blood-sucking hand axe. Harriet was a high-level extraordinary after all, a 14th-level shining knight. In a split second, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the hand axe that was chopped at a rapid speed, but then he felt a pain in his lower abdomen, and a rapier pierced out from the ground and pierced his lower abdomen. Harriet endured the pain and stepped hard, and the glorious fighting spirit blasted through the ground, but there was nothing under the soil. Charlotte moved an underground tunnel for transporting troops from the Machupi fortress over here. After stabbing this sword, she let the troop transport tunnel return to its original position. Harriet's attack was just a simple bombardment of the soil. After 2 consecutive successes, although Charlotte only absorbed a small part of his vitality, his bloody glory was still boiling slightly. He adjusted his posture slightly and prepared for the next attack. Lord Leo jumped onto a nearby building and gestured to him. Charlotte hesitated for a moment and approached. "My lord, I have completed the mission and killed Archduke Ferdinand. I wanted to go back to the Empire, but I met a few colleagues who said they hadn't seen you. I guessed you might be in trouble, so I came back to look for you. I met a few blood servants I temporarily recruited, and then I realized that you were also trapped here. I have been wandering around here for some time, looking for a way to rescue you. Not long ago, I met a hermit nearby. He told me that I needed to find a high-level extraordinary person and send him into the maze to replace you. I used all kinds of means to trick this senior officer of the Fars Empire here." Lord Leo was slightly delighted. He had stayed in this ghost place long enough, but as a great noble, he still waved his hand reservedly and said, "I called you here, not to ask about this. I know you have your eyes on the strong life and blood of that high-level extraordinary, but I want to remind you that although we vampires can absorb the vitality of the enemy and use it to improve our own extraordinary level, we cannot rely entirely on this model. High-level vampires value the purity of blood energy more. If they devour vitality madly without restraint, they will easily degenerate into monsters. Therefore, we will not devour prey with a lower level of extraordinary than ourselves at will, but just replenish a little occasionally. You are still a low-level vampire, so it's not a big problem, but you should have reached the point where you need to condense a blood core, the key to your promotion to Baron. I personally suggest that you don't use the life essence of this high-level extraordinary person like Fars to improve his level, but use it to try to condense a blood core. Let me tell you a secret, the sooner the blood core is condensed, the longer the lifespan of the vampire, and the more time they can stay young." Charlotte was slightly surprised. There was no secret method of condensing blood cores in the Protagoras scroll. Although this great human philosopher was also considered to have a long life, he still died of old age like an ordinary human. Lord Leo saw the expression on Charlotte's face and couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Didn't you learn the secrets of Adonis's blood clan?" Charlotte took a deep breath and whispered, "Sorry, I'm an irregular descendant. As we all know, vampires have no ability to reproduce, and can only transform new vampires through secret rituals or first embrace. At the beginning of the founding of the Baron Empire, it was believed that blood clans were noble, and blood clans were not encouraged to develop new members. They severely cracked down on the wanton creation of offspring. All blood clans must pass the examination and obtain the first embrace certificate before they can develop offspring according to the prescribed number. Whether it is the secret ritual or the first embrace, it is a very inefficient method. This has led to the fact that the population of the blood clan in the Baron Empire has always been low. At present, the total population of the 31 clans does not exceed 20,000, and even less than 1,000th of the total population. Although the Baron Empire has very strict rules for developing offspring, there are still blood clans who develop offspring without obtaining the first embrace certificate. Such offspring are called irregular offspring. Strictly speaking, these irregular descendants of the blood clan are not allowed to exist at all, let alone be qualified to learn the clan's secrets. Although the elders of each clan do not strictly review irregular descendants, and generally turn a blind eye, these irregular descendants are very discriminated against, and most of them cannot get the authentic inheritance of their clan. Lord Leo said, "No wonder you always try to hide your extraordinary level in front of me." Charlotte smiled awkwardly. He didn't hide his extraordinary level because of this, but he certainly wouldn't explain it. Lord Leo threw out a book and said, "Although you can't practice Arthur's blood-sucking secret scroll, The secret method of condensing blood cores in it can still be used for reference. The secret method of condensing blood cores of the Blood Clan is similar. Chapter 91 Arthur's Secret. Lord Leo said calmly, although the blood core you condensed using our Arthur's secret method may have some problems, which is not conducive to future growth, you should not care. Charlotte showed a look of surprise and said, I am lucky to be able to condense the blood core, how dare I expect more? Jinan will never forget the kindness of the Lord for the rest of his life. Lord Leo waved his hand and said, according to the imperial law, you are not qualified to read the blood-sucking secret scroll. I just lend it to you because I cherish talents. But you must never tell this to anyone, otherwise I will kill you with my own hands. Charlotte nodded frequently and thought to herself, sure enough, the maze that was conjured up in my mind is still a classical maze at heart. It is not truly gamified, and the NPCs are not real NPCs. I just mentioned that I wanted to rescue Lord Leo, but before I really did it, he handed me Arthur's blood-sucking secret scroll. As for Lord Leo saying, using Arthur's secret method, the condensed blood core may have some problems, which is not conducive to future growth. Charlotte really doesn't care, he's not a vampire. The reason why Bloody Glory can dominate vampires is that Protagoras single-handedly slaughtered thousands of vampires and exterminated 6 of the 37 clans of the vampires. It's really extraordinary. For example, using the Bloody Vortex to enhance the power of the secrets, such as being able to practice the secrets of the 13 clans, such as the Blood Feast meditation method. Charlotte doesn't plan to return the vampire scroll given by Lord Leo. Anyway, Lord Leo will not leave Machupi, and there is no point in taking back the scroll. Charlotte put the vampire scroll in her arms, turned around and sank into the depths of the ruins. Lord Leo raised the anti-space long-range rifle again, and the battle continued. Harriet was wounded in many places. She was already in danger under the pursuit of Lord Leo. She was targeted by Charlotte. She knew that she had no hope of survival. She suddenly shouted loudly, I am Harriet Alva, Mr. Aubrey Tootin Atwood, Ms. Winnie Arsenault, if you can hear me, please help me pass the message to the Empire. There is a big conspiracy in Baron. Charlotte is a Baron, Charlotte is a vampire, he shouted repeatedly, and his voice echoed in the ruins of Machupi. Aubrey Tootin Atwood had escaped from Machupi long ago, so he naturally would not hear his shouting. Winnie Arsenault did hear Harriet's voice. She was slightly stunned and didn't quite understand why this duelist wanted to frame Charlotte. Winnie Arsenault knew Charlotte's background. After all, Charlotte's cousin was in her detective agency, and Charlotte and Sylvie were both talents trained under the standard imperial education system. It was almost impossible for them to be barren people. Especially, she knew that Charlotte was cultivating bloody glory, and people who cultivate bloody glory could never be vampires. Sylvie Martin also heard these words, and she was even less convinced than Winnie Arsenault that Charlotte was a vampire. She knew Charlotte's family and knew what this guy was like since he was a child. Although Charlotte had been a little weird recently, especially because her strength had improved too quickly, Sylvie Martin would rather believe that her former fiancé had summoned an evil god than believe that he was a vampire. Charlotte smiled slightly, not caring about this slander. After all, this was the Machupi fortress, a place where you can't get anyone to pull you even if you scream your throat out. After reaching a tacit understanding, Lord Leo's shooting skills became less accurate, and he often shot in the three-point direction, forcing Harriet to go to a certain angle and take the initiative to deliver food to Charlotte. First, he had been in Machupi for a while and had a little understanding of the maze of the fortress. Second, as an NPC, he had some authority. Charlotte seized the opportunity and hit Harriet hard again. After Harriet forced Charlotte back, she suddenly stopped hiding, resting her saber on the ground, and shouted, "You vampires, aren't you just coveting my life? I just won't do what you want, Mr. Aubrey Tootin Atwood, Ms. Winnie Arsenault, please help me pass the message to the Empire. Charlotte is a spy of Byron, he is a vampire." With a loud shout, Harriet suddenly slashed at her neck. Charlotte threw the blood rose far away, and at the same time pierced the body of the Imperial soldier. A few minutes later, Charlotte pulled out her sword from Harriet, whose body had become withered, and also picked up the opponent's saber, silently performing an Imperial salute. The other party was at least a qualified soldier, and at the last moment of his life, he hoped to bring the information of the Byron people back to Fars. Although Charlotte would never allow the other party to return to Strasbourg alive, she would not hinder him. She respected the Imperial soldiers who fought to the last moment. Lord Leo's sight suddenly disappeared. The enemy he had just fought with could not be seen, and the road to the ruins of the fortress became clear. He was overjoyed, and his body jumped high, turning into countless small bats. This time there was no more obstacles, breaking through some invisible barrier, flying higher and higher, straight into the clouds. Unlike the previous times, he used the bloodbat technique to fly into the air, but he could not fly high. After flying a long way, Lord Leo remembered that his two servants and the loyal Kyanan were still in the deadly maze, but he did not hesitate at all, and asked the little bats to speed up their flight. At the same time, he said silently in his heart, "Your sacrifice is valuable. After I go back, I will report your merits to the military, and I will never let anyone erase your merits." From beginning to end, this blood clan lord never thought of turning back to save people. Charlotte watched Lord Leo fly away and unfolded the Arthur's blood-sucking scroll in his hand. He hesitated for a while and closed it again. Lord Leo was right. Real vampires should indeed consider condensing blood cores to prepare for the promotion to Baron, but he was not a blood race. The two evil gods could come at any time. He also had to face the third wave of assassinations from the Orc Assassin League. He needed to improve his strength quickly. Charlotte activated the Bloody Glory, slowly digested the life force he swallowed, and chose to put all the harvest this time into the flame hand. The blood-sucking scroll has a total of 17 pages, recording 17 kinds of Adonis blood clan secrets. If he cannot master the Adonis scroll skillfully within the limited time, he will lose his identity as the author and his soul will be taken away by the blood clan evil god Karnstein, who has returned. Although this urgency has been delayed again and again, it is still less than 70 days. In comparison, condensing blood cores is not urgent, nor is it necessary. Chapter 92, Blazing Flame. Large hands made of blood flames were flying all over the sky, constantly making various gestures. Charlotte's face was full of joy. Harriet was indeed a high-level extraordinary person with a particularly strong vitality. She could actually condense 7 flaming hands. The flaming hands were on the 3rd page of the Adonis blood-sucking secret scroll. It was not a profound secret method, but it often took 1 or 2 years longer to condense each flaming hand than the previous one. It took an ordinary vampire 3 to 5 years to cultivate the first flaming hand, and more than 5 years to cultivate the second flaming hand. Therefore, most Adonis vampires would not continue to study this secret method after cultivating 1 flaming hand, but continue to break through. Young high-level Adonis vampires often only have 3 or 5 flaming hands, which is enough for them. Unless they are very old vampires who have been doing nothing for a long time, they will condense more flaming hands. Charlotte is not a vampire, and the Protagoras scrolls would not mention these details. After all, most people would realize that practicing this thing is too time-consuming, and would automatically stop and choose to break through to a higher level. He swallowed the life essence of a high-level knight, and did not encounter a bottleneck in the secret method. He condensed 7 flaming hands in one breath, and then realized that he seemed to have overdone it. With a thought, Charlotte's 5 fingers of a flaming hand rotated, and a firecool silver rhino appeared. The muzzle of this extraordinary alchemical shotgun pointed up and down, left and right, and continuously pointed in 7 directions, just like using an arm to control the fingers, just like a real hand. Another flaming hand flew out. A magic thorn sword blood rose. The blade was like snow, fluttering, and made Asilo's swordsmanship supernatural, and the changes were 3 times more bizarre than when holding it. The angle of each sword was incredible, beyond the limit of human imagination. Charlotte thought to herself, "Isn't this the legendary 3 heads and 6 arms? I have 1 extra hand. The 2 extra heads seem useless, so it doesn't matter if they are gone." He had enough fun, and snapped his fingers. 7 large hands burning with blood flames gradually shrank, flew to his side, and disappeared. Charlotte casually touched the diary, and the thought that came to her mind was that the time for the arrival of the evil blood god Karnstein was pushed back another 18 days. The 4th page of the vampire scroll is the blazing bomb, which is a supernatural power that can fire psychic bullets with bare hands. It can also be pressed into extraordinary firearms, which is much more powerful than firing with bare hands. With my strong blood energy, it should not be difficult to practice this secret method successfully. It will probably take at most 1 or 2 months, however, I am not short of means of long-range attack. I'd better practice the spider art first, and then consider the blazing bomb. The spider art should take less than 2 weeks. Charlotte patted the mud on her body because of the battle, twisted the maze, and walked to Sylvie Martin's side in one step. Sylvie didn't expect him to appear, and stabbed out with a dagger in her hand with all her strength. Fortunately, Charlotte was also a 5th-level extraordinary person, and she had the skill of agility. She dodged the attack with a flick of her body and said with a smile, "Don't be nervous, Cousin Sylvie." When Sylvie saw that it was him, she breathed softly and exhaled a breath of air. She relaxed and said unhappily, "Don't call me cousin." Charlotte shrugged her shoulders and said, "I'm afraid that from now on, you will be my cousin, unless we never contact each other again, although I think you don't care. Winnie and I may have a lot of business, and you won't leave the cat detective agency. You should try to accept this identity." Sylvie pursed her lips and said, "That's fine. It's easier for me to accept than another identity." Charlotte didn't know why Sylvie hated her. Even the real Charlotte Mecklen didn't know that his ugly appearance of running naked on the street and being chased by people was seen by his former fiancée. Charlotte faced the evil god directly, but it only made the memory clearer, and it couldn't make things that were not on the memory appear in her mind. He didn't really care about it. Sylvie was a good marriage partner for a 1st-level clerk. The two families were well matched, and their parents were friends. Sylvie was definitely a little beauty, and she was a graduate of the National Academy, with impeccable character and morals. But for a 34th-level 4th-level clerk, this marriage was very ordinary. Sylvie was of no help to his career, and at most could only be a good wife, but this lady was unwilling to return to her family and preferred to work, which meant that she refused to play the role of a good wife. Teacher Wang Haisheng was a traditional person. If Sylvie had not actively rejected this marriage, he would have been very troubled. The current situation made him much more relaxed. Charlotte smiled, took Sylvie, and soon found Winnie Arsino. Although this cat spirit detective transformed into a desert cat, hid well, and found several secret passages, it was still easy for Charlotte, as the master of the maze, to find her. When Winnie Arsino saw Charlotte and Sylvie appear in front of him, she couldn't help but meow twice in surprise. When she found that the other party didn't understand, she rolled on the ground and returned to her human form. Winnie asked, "You killed Harriet? Are you really a vampire?" Charlotte took out a blood rose, stretched out her hand and gently wiped the blade, showing the female detective her palm. There was blood seeping out from where the blade passed. Of course, he would not give himself a big wound, just a little scratch on the oily skin, just for show. Winnie Arsino didn't believe this in the first place, and when she saw the wound on his hand, she didn't believe it even more. Vampires don't have blood. Even if they are cut, they will only release mist-like blood energy instead of spilling blood. Sylvie pulled Charlotte's hand, took a look, and let it go again. The wound was too shallow, and there was no need to bandage it at all. Charlotte made a gesture, indicating Winnie Arsino to follow her. He took the two ladies and left Machu soon. When the two ladies turned around and looked at the ruins of the fortress, they were slightly moved. They did not feel the horror of this maze, but they did not expect that a high-level extraordinary person like Harriet would fall here. Neither of them asked how Charlotte killed Harriet. Winnie felt that Charlotte had countless secrets, and this was just one of them. As a detective, exploring secrets is the greatest pleasure, but asking directly is boring. Sylvie was too lazy to ask. Anyway, as long as Charlotte was still alive, who cares how he survived? She did not want to care too much about her ex-fiancé. Chapter 93 Life is precious, but love is more precious. Mrs. Nancy had been waiting outside Machu. Just as Charlotte was about to board the carriage, she saw Aubrey Teutonic Atwood getting off the carriage. The president of the Wild Horse Detective Agency had not left. Charlotte shrugged and said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't rescue Mr. Harriet's body. There are some strange things in this fortress ruin." Aubrey Teutonic Atwood looked at Charlotte deeply and asked, "Did you choose this place because you signed a contract with a monster?" This is the most reasonable explanation. Charlotte did not refute or admit it, but bowed slightly and handed Harriet's saber to Aubrey Teutonic Atwood, saying, "This is Mr. Harriet's relic. Please return it to his family. Although I don't want this tragedy to happen, I can't do anything about it." After saying this, Charlotte got on the carriage. After the two ladies were seated, she turned on the copper pipe and said, "Mrs. Nancy, go back to Strasbourg." Aubrey Teutonic Atwood stood in front of the ruins of Machu Fortress, watching Charlotte's carriage go away. He pondered for a long time before getting on the carriage. He could not see through Charlotte Mecklen anymore. If time could go back, Aubrey Teutonic Atwood would never accept Magro Teller's order. Because of the profit of a few crowns, he not only lost 8 detectives, including 3 extraordinary people, but also lost military connections like Harriet. Harriet was promoted to a high-level extraordinary person at such a young age. She has a promising future and will definitely become a powerful arm of the Fiery Horse Detective Agency. In addition, they also need to face the accusations of the Orc Assassin League. The Orc Assassin League will indeed continue to send assassins to pursue targets, but they will also add fees for such orders that cause them to lose manpower. If the employer cannot pay the additional fees, they will also be on the assassination list of these killers. The orcs have never been good men and women. There are too many troubles. Back in Strasbourg, Charlotte first sent Vinnie Arsenault and Sylvie Martin back to 22 Avenue de Martel in the Alcatraz district. Then she asked Mrs. Nancy to drive back to 58 Avenue des Champs-Élysées. He got off the carriage and felt that the atmosphere was a little wrong. This house, which usually only had him and at most Mrs. Nancy and 3 clever cats, had 3 carriages parked in front of the door. 2 of them had the emblem of the Breton family, and the other was a military carriage. Charlotte asked Mrs. Nancy to drive the carriage to the stable, and she stepped into the hall on the first floor. There were 3 people in the hall. One of them was naturally Anne, the other was her cousin Claire Breton, and the last one was actually that, Sister St. Karen. Charlotte suppressed the shock in her heart, smiled slightly, and said, "I didn't expect to have so many guests. My humble home is really honored." Claire smiled and said, "I have military duties to attend to, and I can't stay for a long time. Please allow me to be brief. First of all, I want to apologize for not being able to duel for you, although the troop deployment is beyond my ability to resist. I should have arranged other friends to help in advance. This is my negligence. Fortunately, I am relieved that you returned safely. I, Claire Breton, am willing to be Charlotte Mecklen's friend for life and stand on his side in everything." Claire waved his hand to stop Charlotte from speaking, and continued, "The second thing is that I want to ask Mr. Charlotte, do you really want to marry my cousin, Anne de Breton, as your wife, and are you willing to make efforts for it?" Anne looked anxious, her little hands tightly grasping her skirt, but she dared not speak, and her face was full of anxiety. Charlotte put her hand on her chest and smiled. "One of my teachers at Sheffield University once said, 'Life is precious, but love is more precious.' I'm willing to do anything for Anne, even through fire and water." Claire smiled, and Anne was obviously relieved. The elite of the Imperial Army said, "Mr. Charlotte, forgive me for being blunt, but a 4th-level extraordinary person is not qualified to marry a lady from the Brittany family. You are practicing bloody glory. If it were in peacetime, you would have no chance to practice this secret method to a high level. To practice bloody glory, you must kill lives, and they cannot be low-level lives. In the Empire, killing is illegal. To kill extraordinary people and obtain their vitality is not tolerated by the laws of the Empire and the major families, but now you have a chance. Byron has declared war on your hometown, the Principality of Behemoth. Within a week at most, Fars will also declare war on Byron's group of vampires. Although I cannot represent the Brittany family yet, I am willing to help you and stand on your side in this matter. It's just that you need to go to the battlefield now." Charlotte took a breath and said, "I'm still a civilian." He probably understood what Claire was here for. This cousin really supported his and Anne's love, so he encouraged him to go to the front line. Only on the front battlefield can there be high-level extraordinary people with strong vitality. They can make Charlotte's bloody glory grow rapidly. Only by becoming a high-level extraordinary can Charlotte and Anne be together. Moreover, the battlefield is also the easiest place to make achievements, which can allow him to be promoted quickly. Of course, pure meritorious service does not necessarily lead to promotion, but with Claire's help, no one will snatch Charlotte's credit. Claire replied lightly, "Civil servants can also go to the battlefield, and it is not a big deal to transfer to military positions." Charlotte glanced at Anne and answered decisively, "I am willing to go to the battlefield for Miss Anne, for the Empire, and for the peace of mankind." Claire nodded and said, "I have finished my words. I came back to Strasbourg to urge a batch of supplies. I can only stay for 2 hours. If you don't come back in half an hour, we will have no chance to meet. Next, please Mr. Charlotte, work hard to make achievements." He said goodbye in a hurry. With one less person in the room, Charlotte's pressure increased instead of decreasing. If she had a choice, she really didn't want to face Sister St. Karen. Sister Karen smiled and said, "I came here just to say one thing. You can borrow the silver rhino indefinitely. and you don't have to worry about it being damaged or lost." The sister pointed to the ground, where a small red box was placed. She said gently, "Here are 120 rounds of magic armor-piercing bombs." After saying this, Sister St. Karen said to Anne, "Please don't go home too late." She also left like Claire. Chapter 94. Mr. Mecklin is a very interesting young man. As soon as Aunt Karen left, Anne fell into Charlotte's arms, tears falling like pearls, and murmured, "I am a bad woman. I am a selfish woman. I struggled for a long time, but still, chose selfishness." Mr. Mecklin, I know this sentence is very immoral, but I still want to say, can you please go to the battlefield for me? I, Anne of Brittany, swear on the honor of my family that if you can't come back, I will never marry, or, you can refuse me. Charlotte patted Anne's pink back and whispered, "But this is also what I dream of. Please allow me not to refuse this request. You also know that this is the only chance for a poor boy to marry the Earl's daughter," Anne laughed, but then she burst into tears again. Charlotte was not a poor boy, but he was the son of a businessman, and naturally separated from the nobles by a gap. If he could not make a fortune by his own ability, even if he made more money, he would not be able to get the Earl's approval to marry his daughter. Charlotte was not afraid of going to the battlefield. He had inside and blood flame transformation, and his survivability was much stronger than that of ordinary extraordinary people. Moreover, he really needed an opportunity to quickly improve his strength. After all, he was also in a hurry to face the coming of the evil god. This opportunity could only be on the battlefield. Anne walked out of number 58 Élysée Countryside Street, wiped her tears, and got on the carriage. When the carriage turned out of the Élysée Field Street, there was a carriage waiting. Aunt Karen got off the carriage gracefully and said, "Miss, you won the bet with the Earl." Anne was not excited or happy, and said sadly, "I feel like a bad girl. I am forcing the person I love most to go to the battlefield. I feel deeply guilty and uneasy." Aunt Karen chuckled and said, "Miss, you don't need to blame yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. Don't blame the Earl. Even the Earl has things he can't do. He is worried that the most beautiful rose in his home will be picked by someone without intention. He had to resort to this desperate measure and made these temptations." Anne whispered, "When he first met me, he rushed into the evil god corridor to save me regardless of his life. This kind of temptation is totally unnecessary." Aunt Karen smiled slightly, and thought to herself, if he hadn't stood up that time, he wouldn't even have the chance to be tempted this time. The Earl has sent people to the Principality of Behemoth to investigate this young man. According to the results of the investigation, the Earl burned it on the same day. He didn't show it to anyone, nor did he mention it to anyone. He was just angry for a whole day. He touched his beloved sword 9 times and caught the silver rhino twice. The Earl must want to kill Mr. Mecklin with his own hands. I guess Mr. Mecklin is a very interesting young man. He must have a lot of dark history. Anne murmured to herself softly, "I never expected so much." "This war can't be fought," Aunt Karen said. "Every empire wants to expand. Small and medium-sized countries are being dragged down by the empire. This war is inevitable. Miss, don't worry too much. Your father won't transfer him to a dangerous unit. After all, he is not as ambitious as Mr. Clare." The Earl took advantage of Mr. Clare this time. "I hope he won't be angry," Anne wanted to refute this, but when she thought about what Charlotte did on a daily basis, it seemed that she really didn't have any lofty ambitions. Moreover, Charlotte, the son of a wealthy businessman, could never compare to a young noble like Clare, who had too many resources. After sending Anne away, Charlotte couldn't help but whistled. He said to Mrs. Nancy, "Please go to the Cat and Clover coffee shop and pick up my 3 little cuties. By the way, buy a few pounds of beef, a few pounds of mutton, some pork, onions, lettuce, and spices, and buy 2 more barrels of beer. We want to celebrate today." Mrs. Nancy agreed and went out. Not long after, errand boys from various shops came to deliver things. Charlotte asked them to deliver all the things to the backyard. Charlotte had already prepared a set of barbecue tools that were necessary for time travelers, but he was not so diligent on Earth. After traveling here, he lived in a bustling commercial street like number 58 Élysée Field Street. It was too convenient to go out for dinner. Occasionally, when he didn't want to go out, Mrs. Nancy provided private cooking services, so he was even more lazy. Although the terrace on the 3rd floor had a better view, it was troublesome to run up and down the stairs after the barbecue. Charlotte didn't want to do it herself, and it didn't feel good to ask Mrs. Nancy to do it. When Mrs. Nancy returned with the last batch of things and 3 kittens, Charlotte had already cut dozens of skewers, put various pieces of meat on them, sprinkled them with spices and fine salt, and roasted them on the brazier, creating a fragrant aroma. When the 3 kittens saw their owner, they immediately jumped out of the bamboo basket carried by Mrs. Nancy, meowing and running towards Charlotte, rubbing against his trouser legs. Charlotte was also very happy to see her cats. She used psychic magic to communicate with them for a while, prepared food for the kittens first, and then called Mrs. Nancy. "Let's eat together." Mrs. Nancy was not polite and took over the job of roasting meat, freeing Charlotte. Charlotte was a little surprised to see her skilled appearance and asked, "Mrs. Nancy, how come you seem to be familiar with barbecue?" Mrs. Nancy answered while grilling meat, "I have an acquaintance. She is a cook who worked with me in the house of my previous master. She is particularly good at making barbecue. My previous employer likes barbecue very much, and I often helped and learned a little." Charlotte immediately became interested and asked, "Does that lady have a new job now?" Mrs. Nancy shook her head and said, "She is different from me. She is not from the old world, but a native of the new world. She comes from the Far East and was captured and brought to Fars because of the war. She is not a free person. The master originally promised that as long as she served for 5 years, he would issue her a certificate of freedom and allow her to become a free person. She invested in the gold mines of the New World, lost all her money, and went bankrupt, so he broke his promise and sold her." Charlotte was silent immediately. He knew that there was human trafficking in the old world, and even a human market on Champs-Élysées, but he didn't want to think about these things. Mrs. Nancy seemed to think that she had said something wrong and fell silent. Charlotte held up a skewer of barbecue, smiled and livened up the atmosphere, and asked, "What's the lady's name?" Mrs. Nancy put a string of mushrooms on the brazier and said, "Her name is too long. I only remember her nickname, Mrs. Yumaze Sauce." Chapter 95. This is also in Fars. 81. Ode to the Gods. The glorious magic circle is still 200 subscriptions away from over 10,000. I will struggle a little more and ask for the first order. If I can get the badge for over 10,000 first orders, I will get the small badge for 10,000 words a day next month to please the readers. Well, this chapter may be a little late after midnight, but it will definitely be there. Charlotte couldn't help but smile and said, "What an interesting name. It's a pity that I can't taste the craftsmanship of this lady." Mrs. Nancy hesitated for a moment and whispered, "Actually, I was shopping just now and passed by the population market. I met Mrs. Wu Mizijiang. She doesn't look good and is fat. No buyers like her. The situation is very bad." Charlotte poured herself a glass of beer, took a big sip, and said slowly, "Mrs. Nancy, if you want to help an old colleague, go to the population market and bring her over." Mrs. Nancy was slightly shocked and quickly got up and said, "I'll bring her back right away. Her craftsmanship is really great. I guarantee you will be satisfied." Mrs. Nancy left in a hurry, and Charlotte became a person again. He drank a glass of beer and poured another one. He had been in this world for so long, and he had tried very hard to adapt to this world, but many times he still felt that he was out of tune with the world. "I really want to have the same ability as those senior travelers, and change the world." Charlotte also had fantasies, relying on his own knowledge and vision to make a big splash in this world. But he was just an ordinary clerk. Although he did everything he could to climb up crazily and became a small noble at the bottom in a short time, he was still a long way from changing the world. "I don't know where the Brittany family will take me. Actually, I am in charge of the patrol army in Lucavero district. If I work harder and subdue more than 20 gangs in Lucavero district, I will be a very powerful force, do some more business. As a time traveler, it is quite wrong to only earn a meager fixed salary. How about opening a pharmacy? Don't really sell medicine, but sell some herbal tea, flower tea, beauty paste, yin nourishing and yang strengthening soup and other things in the name of a pharmacy. The good thing about this business is that the cost of raw materials is low, the profit of a single product is high, and the market competition is not great." Charlotte ate and drank, and soon she was a little drunk, and the thoughts in her mind became very messy and unsystematic. Mrs. Nancy brought back a fat lady in her 40s. She was not as tall and strong as Mrs. Nancy, and she had the temperament of a long-term worker. Following the two of them was a human trader, who smiled lightly when he saw Charlotte and said, "Sir, are you looking for a cook? Please allow me to introduce this lady. She is from the New World and is of noble birth. Because her country was defeated in the war, she ended up in Fars. She is a senior cook trained by senior professionals using the most rigorous system. She originally worked in a baron's family. She was conscientious and was very much loved by her original master. Charlotte glanced at the human trader, interrupted his chattering, and said, I am the commander-in-chief of the patrol army in the Lucavero district. Tomorrow I plan to jointly enforce the law with the patrol army in the Picardy district to sweep up the chaotic population market. What do you think? The human trader quickly swallowed the offer of 5 EQ and smiled. You only need to pay the cost price, Charlotte muttered. Let's jointly enforce the law tomorrow and sweep up the population market. These bastards, if we don't catch a few of them and torture them severely, they don't know what it means to respect the goddess. Mrs. Nancy and Mrs. Wu Mizijiang stared in amazement. Charlotte just muttered a few words about joint law enforcement, and the human trader wiped his sweat and gave Mrs. Wu Mizijiang to Charlotte for free. Charlotte is not used to bullying people, but this is only in Fars. If it were on Earth, he might choose to beat the human trafficker to death. Not paying for free is already a great mercy on his part. Although it has been compromised, this kind of thing still cannot be compromised. Charlotte knows that he can't help many people, and he is not yet able to change the world, but it is good to help one person. He got Mrs. Wu Mizijiang's contract to sell her body, and planned to issue a certificate of freedom when he went to number 1 Falcon Street tomorrow. Although hiring a free cook would pay more money than using a free servant, he would rather spend more money to hire a cook. Well, then turn this lady into a patrol soldier. An extra imperial salary would be considered as compensation for Mrs. Wu Mizijiang. Mrs. Wu Mizijiang went to wash up, especially washing her hands thoroughly, and then came to help Charlotte grill the meat. It must be said that this lady's cooking skills are good, much better than Charlotte who traveled from Earth. Since Charlotte began to practice, his appetite has become very large. Mrs. Nancy and Mrs. Wu Mizijiang hardly ate anything, but he ate up the dozens of kilograms of food he bought and drank more than half a bucket of beer. After eating and drinking, Charlotte left the yard to the 2 ladies and went back to the 3rd floor. Mrs. Wu Mizijiang had been showing on the street all day today. In fact, she was very tired. She was busy just now and was already forcing herself. As soon as Charlotte left, she sat down, gasping for breath, and said, Nancy, thank you. Mrs. Nancy whispered, the new master has a very good temper. Except that he doesn't like to be disturbed and can only clean the room after work. There are no other taboos. Also, there are often 3 young ladies coming here. You must not talk nonsense in front of them. Although Mr. Charlotte has a good temper, he is also an extraordinary person. He just killed 8 detectives and 2 assassins not long ago, and he also had a duel with someone. In short, neither you nor I can bear the consequences of angering this gentleman. Nancy poured a glass of beer and handed it to her former colleague. Mrs. Wu Mizijiang took the wine glass, drank it in one gulp, and said, I'm really a little hungry. I didn't eat enough yesterday, and I didn't eat anything today. That hateful human trader also told me not to talk nonsense, and wanted me to cooperate with him and sell myself at a high price. Mrs. Nancy flexibly roasted some of the remaining meat, mushrooms, and vegetables with her hands, and handed them to Mrs. Wu Mizijiang. Watching her wolf down and eat them, she said gently, suffering will always pass, don't think about the past. Charlotte was on the terrace on the 3rd floor, knocked her eyebrows, turned off the insight, smiled slightly, and was quite looking forward to the new cook, and began her daily practice again. He had to successfully practice the runes of the spirit spider art in the shortest time. With the spirit spider art and the lightness art, even if he encountered a high-level extraordinary, he could fight and walk. The extraordinary system of the old continent, from low to high, is purely divided by energy strength. Many low-level extraordinary people have almost no special powers, and even many mid-level and low-level extraordinary people have no powers. There is almost a world of difference between extraordinary people who have powers and those who do not. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Freedom Nights. There are only a few low-level extraordinary people like Charlotte who have condensed 4 blood runes and possess 4 supernatural powers, insight, blood flame, agility, and angel thorn. Charlotte repaired at home for 3 days before he started to work diligently again. He arrived at number 1 Falcon Street and inspected it first. As a superior, he must be familiar with his subordinates. It was not for diligence. Charlotte was worried that an assassin would sneak in and he would not notice it. Charlotte keenly discovered that more and more people came to work, more than 200 people. He felt a little strange, went back to the office, and called Himensha over. He promised to help the other party to be promoted tonight, and he couldn't do nothing. Charlotte carefully asked the girl from the southern continent about her training. As he expected, Himensha dropped out of school very early. She did not learn the orthodox night breathing method at the National Academy, but learned the breathing method from a wandering knight who passed by her hometown. This breathing method is not complete. Himensha has practiced it for 7 or 8 years, but has been stuck at the stage of breaking through the power seed, and has never made any progress. The old continent is not like Earth. The culture on Earth is open, and any knowledge can be obtained through the internet and some professional schools. There are academic exchanges within the 4 universities in Fars, but outside of the universities, even the National Academy hardly communicates with the outside world, and it is difficult for outsiders to learn the orthodox night breathing method. Charlotte pondered for a moment and said, "You are practicing the flame demon breathing method, which is very popular in the southern continent. But in fact, this breathing method has major flaws. More than 100 years ago, a professor improved the flame demon breathing method and renamed it Golden Forbidden Flame. I can help you find a textbook on Golden Forbidden Flame. After you correct your breathing method, I can also find a senior to try to help you break the seed of power by forcibly infusing you with fighting spirit." Charlotte was trying to find an extraordinary path for Himensha when she heard a knock on the door. A slightly hearty voice sounded outside the office. "Mr. Mecklin, can I come in?" The voice sounded familiar, and Charlotte hurriedly said, "Please come in." A beautiful woman with a heroic aura, dignified features, unique style, and a slightly older appearance walked into his office. It was Mrs. Mavis, the chief patrolman of Alucavero district and the inner court guard who should have partnered with him according to the standard configuration of the city patrol army. This beautiful lady with a complicated identity smiled and said, "Sorry to bother you," Charlotte said in accordance with etiquette. "No need to bother you." At the same time, she gestured for Himensha to leave. Madame Mavis did not look at Himensha for a second time. She waited until she left before saying, "The patrol troops in the Lucavero district will be reorganized into the Free Knights and may go to the battlefield at any time. I still have the duties of the inner court guards and cannot leave with the knights, so I will temporarily resign from the post of chief patrol. Your new partner will probably be in office in a few days." Charlotte knew the military system of the empire. The army of the Fars Empire was divided into 5 types, from high to low status, namely, the royal knights under the emperor, the private knights of the nobles, the local army, the free knights and the mercenaries. The royal knights, the private knights of the nobles and the local army are all permanent armies. The free knights are temporary conscription troops, which are formed during wartime and disbanded in battle. Mercenaries are outsourced and generally not paid or paid. They can only obtain the plunder certificate issued by the empire, which allows them to legally rob hostile countries in war. The city patrol army belongs to the local army and is generally not allowed to leave the station. However, when there is a war, because the city patrol army is originally a military sequence of the government and does not need an additional salary, it is possible to be given the number of the free knights and have the power to go to the battlefield. Not only the Fars Empire, but also the countries in the old continent like to reorganize the local army and put it into the battlefield as cannon fodder. Of course, most of the free knights are not part-time local troops, but purely temporary conscripted troops. After the war, they often face the fate of disbanding. By the way, most detective agencies are officially registered as mercenaries, and the official registration of adventure groups is also mercenaries. The agency responsible for the registration and management of detective agencies, mercenaries, and adventure groups in the empire is the city patrol army in various places. He was slightly surprised and asked, "Who is my new partner?" Mrs. Mavis smiled and said, "I don't know either. However, you should be more concerned about where you will be sent after joining the Free Knights." Charlotte asked subconsciously, "Where will I be sent?" Mrs. Mavis replied, "You were born in the Principality of Behemoth. You will most likely be sent to the Principality of Behemoth to fight Lady Nansara." Charlotte frowned slightly. He really didn't want to go back to the Principality of Behemoth. He was a time traveler, and what he hoped most was to break away from the past. so as not to be discovered by his acquaintances in the past. But he immediately thought, when I go back to the Principality of Behemoth, I don't have to hang out with my old acquaintances. I can just hide in the army. Madame Mavis said, there is one more thing. Because it will be reorganized into knightly order and may be sent to the battlefield, you have been given the power to expand. The Lucavero District Patrol Army can be expanded to 3,000 people. Another thing, the Empire will add a group of people for you, but most of them need to be recruited by you yourself. I came here this time and brought you a batch of appointment and dismissal documents for the Patrol Army and the Free Knights. Madame Mavis smiled and did not move. Charlotte understood the lady's hints and said, I won't stop anyone from leaving. Many people are afraid of going to the battlefield, so those who eat empty salaries will try every means to transfer out of the Lucavero District Patrol Army. The main purpose of Madame Mavis's coming this time is to intercede for these people. Charlotte was so knowledgeable and tactful that Madame Mavis smiled and said, the documents are too heavy. They are all in the carriage. I will ask the coachman to bring them to you later. Charlotte smiled and nodded to show that she understood. She talked to Madame Mavis about some trivial things, and the lady left calmly. But a moment later, her coachman brought up a large suitcase, which was full of new appointment and dismissal documents. The matter of self-recruitment is a very difficult matter for soldiers in the old world. After all, it is not easy to recruit thousands of people in a short period of time. But for Charlotte, this matter is too easy. He finally knew why more people came to work today. They came to handle the transfer procedures. Charlotte sat in the office for a while, asked Madame Nancy to prepare the carriage, and went to her former workplace, Kilmainham Prison. Chapter 97 Recruiting. The new warden was called Anthony. He was very enthusiastic about Charlotte's sudden visit. The two had a friendly conversation for a while, and then Charlotte told her the purpose of her visit. My patrol army will be reorganized into the Free Knights, but the Empire cannot provide me with enough manpower, so I came to ask for your help. Anthony was also a smart man. He smiled and said, I'm sorry, Kilmainham Prison is full of serious criminals. Charlotte shrugged her shoulders and said, of course I know that the prisoners in Kilmainham Prison are not good. You are the warden of Kilmainham Prison, and you should know people from other prisons. I wonder if you can help me make an introduction. Charlotte didn't know Anthony's background, but he was 100% sure that this person was also a man of senior Sister Mendelman, otherwise the other party would not know him, and would not have signed the transfer order so readily. How could he not use such a network of people? Warden Anthony hesitated, pondered for a moment, and smiled. If I give you a group of prisoners from other prisons, there will be no problem. How about this? Tomorrow I will let those prisoners report to number 1 Falcon Street. I am not sure how many people there will be, but there will definitely be more than 1,000. Charlotte was overjoyed and chatted for a while. Before leaving, she deliberately forgot the 10 EQ on the seat. Anthony did not remind her and personally sent Charlotte out of Kilmainham Prison. Charlotte returned to the carriage. He finally understood why powerful people can always be one step ahead of others. A few days ago, Claire Breton mentioned to him, within a week at most, Fars will declare war on the vampires of Byron. Today, Mrs. Mavis told him the news that the Lucavero District Patrol Army would be reorganized into the Free Knights, and even brought a document so that he could legally recruit soldiers in advance. It just so happened that Charlotte used to work in Kilmainham Prison, and the new warden was in the same camp as him, so he was able to get a group of prisoners in the prison before others and set up his knights first. When the Fars Empire officially declared war, it was too late for someone to think of recruiting soldiers from the prison. Of course, people at higher levels would know the news earlier, but they would not have Charlotte's worries, and the nobles' armies must be fully staffed. Charlotte pondered for a while in the carriage, and said to Mrs. Nancy, go back to number 1 Falcon Street. Although Anthony promised to help him operate a group of prisoners, firstly, the number might not be enough, and secondly, the quality of the soldiers was worrying, so he needed to find another group of new recruits. Back at number 1 Falcon Street, Charlotte asked Dubin to invite all the gang leaders in the Lucavero area. Dubin took a few people out for more than 2 hours and invited back 50 or 60 people, a total of 13 gang leaders and representatives. Of the 5 largest gangs in the Lucavero area, only 3 sent people here, the Lone Wolf Gang, the Dark Knight Beasts, and the Gurov Brotherhood. The other 2 did not let Dubin see any decent people and were quite arrogant. Although the gangs did not care much about the patrol army, most of them did not want to go against the patrol army. It was rare for Charlotte to send someone to invite them politely. Some gang leaders were also curious about what the leader of the patrol army in this area was going to do. However, most gang leaders did not dare to come in person, fearing that they would be wiped out by the patrol army, so they just sent their men to represent them. The leader of the Lone Wolf Gang came in person. Because he had been slashed on the face, he called himself Scar. He was strong and fierce. Although he was not extraordinary, he was strong in martial arts. The second in command of the Dark Knight Beasts came, nicknamed Wang Shuang, who was a first-level extraordinary. Wang Shuang was tall and did not follow the path of a knight, but was a demon hunter. He was even more majestic than a demon hunter nicknamed White Wolf that Charlotte knew. You have to know that White Wolf was already a sturdy and strong man with a height of more than 2 picometers. The Gurov Brotherhood was a gang composed of 3 brothers, but none of the 3 Gurov brothers came. The one who came was an inconspicuous person, with a thin figure and a dagger hanging around his waist. He called himself Golden Rat. In addition to the representatives of the 3 major gangs, the most eye-catching one was the leader of a small gang, a slightly stout lady with a good appearance. She called herself the Doll Sister and was also an extraordinary person. She was also the only extraordinary person among the gang members who came to the patrol army headquarters this time, and she took the path of a puppet master. Charlotte was very friendly and smiling to these gang leaders, but what she said was quite overbearing. The Lucavallo district must be under the jurisdiction of the city patrol army. Several gang members were in an uproar. If it weren't for the rumor that the leader of the city patrol army was not only a superhuman, but also killed 8 superhuman detectives from the Fiery Horse Society in a 1-on-8 battle, these gang members would definitely riot. Scar from the Lone Wolf Gang had a fierce look in his eyes and asked, "Charlotte, what do you mean by this?" Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "I have a batch of blank documents in my hand. I need you to send a group of people to join the city patrol army and participate in the management of the Lucavallo district." This time, the gang members were even more agitated. However, his attitude was completely different from before. Scar smiled grimly and asked, "I wonder how many documents you have? You can give all these quotas to our Lone Wolf Gang. I will take care of the entire Lucavallo district for you." Among the 5 largest gangs in Lucavallo district, only the Lone Wolf Gang had its leader come in person. Although Scar was not a superhuman, he was proud of his strong martial arts. Ordinary superhumans were not his opponents. He wanted to suppress Charlotte and give the general leader a warning. Charlotte smiled slightly, raised her voice and said, "There can only be one voice in Lucavallo district, and that is the voice of Charlotte Mecklen. I don't mind if someone provokes me, and I don't mind killing the provocateur." Charlotte took out the silver rhino, pressed the magic armor-breaking bombs into the space magazine one by one, and slapped it on the table. When Scar saw this superhuman pistol, although his eyes were still fierce, he did not speak. He knew that a superhuman weapon in the hands of a superhuman was enough to kill the opponent by 2 or 3 levels. Yellow Bear and Doll Sister also kept quiet. Although they were both extraordinary, they were both at the first level and had no confidence that they could compete with Charlotte. The restless gang members finally calmed down. Charlotte was also notorious. Although most of the patrol troops in the Lucavallo district were employed without work, there were more than 200 people working on a daily basis. They were not a small force. Even the 5 most powerful gangs in the Lucavallo district did not have the confidence that they could take down the patrol troops alone. What's more, Charlotte did not want to embarrass everyone, but to divide power among the major gangs. No one wanted to miss this feast, and someone immediately said, "Your Lone Wolf Gang can't eat such a big cake. We, the Dark Knight Beasts, are willing to help General Charlotte share some of the responsibilities." Chapter 98 Black Scorpion Gang. Scar from the Lone Wolf Gang was not convinced, but he knew that if he continued to provoke Charlotte, she would dare to shoot him. Scar asked himself if he could survive the magic armor-breaking bomb. He glared at the person who had just spoken to the Dark Knight Beast and said coldly, "Can you represent the Dark Knight Beast?" The Yellow Bear said nothing, took a step forward, expressed his attitude, and supported the person who spoke. Scar was not afraid of the Yellow Bear, but he did not want to conflict with a demon hunter. He secretly said in his heart, "Humph, when our Lone Wolf Gang joins the city patrol army, sooner or later the city patrol army will listen to our command. This bastard young man has no idea what society is. Does he think our people will listen to him when they join the city patrol army? It's so naive." No one objected. Charlotte distributed most of the expansion quotas in her hands according to the size of the gang and the status of the gang members who came to participate in this gathering. After Charlotte made the allocation, he smiled and watched the gang members fighting for the quota. Their faces flushed, and they occasionally had to fight and made some adjustments. It took a whole day to roughly determine how many people each gang would send to join the Lucavero District Patrol Army. He only had one request, that these gangs must actually send people to number 1 Yanshin Street to participate in the daily training of the patrol army. If they refused to come, they would be exempted from the quota. The people from the 13 gangs had no objection to this. Anyway, the people sent here would only be the gang's low-level thugs. It would not affect the leaders of them if they worked harder and made more trips. The people in these gangs didn't know that the Lucavero District Patrol Army had been reorganized into the Free Knights and could set off at any time to fight in the Principality of Behemoth. Charlotte only needed to find an excuse to take everyone away. Once these people were on the battlefield, it would not be so easy to get them back. The battlefield is the place that can sharpen people the most. After a few battles, these people will only listen to their superiors and will no longer obey the orders of the former gang bosses. Besides, the patrol army is at least the regular soldiers of the Empire, and the treatment is not bad. What future can the gang's low-level thugs have? After confirming the quota of 13 gangs to join the patrol army, Charlotte sent these gang members away without saying anything except asking them to send their people over early tomorrow morning. Early the next morning, Charlotte took the carriage to work very diligently. This was an extremely rare continuous work for him. Warden Anthony is indeed a very credible person. Since the morning, batches of prisoners have been sent in from the 6 major prisons in Strasbourg, and almost all of them are young and strong prisoners, and 70% of them are men. 13 gangs in the Lucavero district also sent people to report. What Charlotte couldn't understand was that there were quite a few young female gang members. Looking at this group of old-fashioned girls, some were dressed in shorts, some in maple leaf skirts, and some in men's clothes. They were really a bit strange and bizarre. By the afternoon, Charlotte's men had expanded to nearly 3,000 people, of which 1,200 were from the prison. And the remaining nearly 1,000 were from the 13 gangs. Charlotte promoted his old subordinates, including the adventurers he had fooled and the patrol troops brought by Dubin, to captains and vice-captains, and dispersed the prisoners and gang members. Each team was full of 50 people, and 70 or 80 combat teams were formed. Of course, many teams were not full. After the reorganization, it was already evening. Charlotte arranged this group of patrol soldiers with complicated origins into a team, and urged the blood flames. His body was boiling red to strengthen his momentum, and he shouted, "I think everyone is hungry. I will take you to have a good meal." The local army of the old continent, especially the patrol soldiers, did not have the welfare of providing meals. They had to solve the problem of eating by themselves. These people have been reporting and dividing into teams since morning. Whether they are prisoners or gang members, they are all troublemakers. I don't know how many conflicts they have had. They are already hungry and tired. Hearing that Charlotte was going to lead everyone to have a good meal, everyone became excited and followed Charlotte out of number 1 Falcon Street. Charlotte called Mason and Himengsha to her side and whispered, "You take your own team and go buy a batch of food first and send it to the Black Scorpion gang." Neither of them knew what Charlotte was going to do, but they obediently took their men to buy food. Soon someone noticed something was wrong, because Charlotte did not take everyone to the commercial district of Lucavero, but went straight to the headquarters of the Black Scorpion gang, one of the 5 major gangs. Charlotte was a clerk of the 34th rank, a 4th-level official, a low-level dignitary and an imperial dignitary, and a supernatural being. In recent battles, he had a strong record, and he was also the chief of the patrol army in Lucavero, so he had great prestige. Although there were a few smart people in this messy patrol army who had doubts, no one dared to jump out and question them, not to mention the group of prisoners. The gang members who were sent here were all low-level thugs, and they didn't have any ideas. Dubin saw the headquarters of the Black Scorpion gang appear in his sight, and he couldn't help but feel uneasy. He found Charlotte and asked, "Boss, what are we going to do?" Charlotte didn't answer him, but took out the anti-space long-range rifle and shouted, "We 13 gangs have reached an alliance. Why should we share the benefits with those who don't join? I now declare, conquer the Black Scorpion gang, and all the wealth will be divided equally among us." He pointed the extraordinary rifle forward with one hand, and his posture was extremely chic. With one shot, he blasted the door of the Black Scorpion gang into pieces. Sister Karen not only allowed Charlotte to borrow the silver rhino for a long time, but also brought him a box of 120 rounds of magic armor-breaking bombs, so he no longer had to worry about insufficient firepower. The backbone of Charlotte's patrol army was the group of adventurers who were deceived into joining the gang. When they heard that they could rob it well, they immediately encouraged their men to charge. The group of prisoners from various prisons didn't care about the Black Scorpion gang. Although the people from the 13 gangs felt that something was wrong, they were also forced to rush into the Black Scorpion gang's base. As one of the 5 largest gangs in Lucavero district, the Black Scorpion gang has 700 to 800 members and is very powerful. Although there are no extraordinary people in the gang, the leader Black Scorpion was a senior mercenary in his early years. He has superb martial arts and rich practical experience. He usually controls several streets in Lucavero district, and no one dares to provoke him. When Dubin came to invite people in the morning, Black Scorpion didn't want to meet him at all. He told him to get out directly with a very bad attitude. Dubin only brought a few people and didn't dare to make trouble in the Black Scorpion gang's territory. He could only swallow his anger and leave. Black Scorpion didn't take Dubin's expulsion seriously. As a local snake, he knew how many hard-working people there were in the patrol army in Lucavero district. They were less than 1/3 of the Black Scorpion gang. Even if they fought head-on, he was not afraid of the patrol army. How could he have expected that Charlotte would expand his patrol army to nearly 3,000 people in one day? Chapter 99 Bad Chamber of Commerce. Black Scorpion heard the sound of the devil-breaking armor bomb smashing the door. He didn't know what happened, and thought to himself, could it be someone from the Lone Wolf gang? Or the Dark Knight Beast? I haven't had any conflicts with other gangs recently, so why would they suddenly attack our Black Scorpion gang? He was confident in his fighting ability, and rushed out of the room with an iron chain, but saw that there were several times more people than the Black Scorpion gang pouring into the station. The young man in the lead, holding a super rifle in one hand, was as heroic as a god, and aimed at him. Charlotte didn't know Black Scorpion, but the gang leader was extraordinary, so he didn't hesitate to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. Even a high-level supernatural can't rely on self-defense fighting spirit to resist the devil-breaking armor bomb. Black Scorpion is a mere gang leader who has never been promoted to supernatural. How can he resist it? Charlotte shot Black Scorpion to death with one shot. Although he deliberately acted recklessly and shot with one hand in order to establish his prestige and intimidate this group of messy subordinates, his aim was actually quite good. The leader of the Black Scorpion gang was hit by a magic-breaking armor bomb, and his whole body exploded into a ball of blood mist, leaving no trace of his body. Charlotte did not expect that the magic-breaking armor bomb would have such a huge power against ordinary people. Dubin was an old member of the patrol army and knew the Black Scorpion. Seeing that Chief Charlotte was so fierce and exploded the Black Scorpion with one shot, he immediately shouted, "The Black Scorpion is dead. Those who are willing to surrender will not be killed, and those who resist will be killed without mercy," he shouted several times in a row, but the ragtag patrol army formed by Charlotte had too many prisoners and gang thugs at the bottom, and there was no concept of enforcing orders. Charlotte had also promised that the wealth of the Black Scorpion gang would be divided equally, resulting in many members of the Black Scorpion gang being beaten to death before they could surrender. Charlotte had no intention of restraining his men. He was a math teacher in his previous life and had no experience in this area. Without the leader of the gang, the Black Scorpion gang was not a well-trained combat unit. Under the attack of the patrol army, they were defeated and surrendered one after another. In less than half an hour, Charlotte occupied the Black Scorpion gang's stronghold. There were patrol soldiers everywhere who were rummaging around and looking for money. Many people even touched the Black Scorpion gang members randomly, regardless of life or death, and took out their money bags and put them directly into their arms. Looking at the chaotic scene, Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. He was not sure before he set out. After all, he had never led an army. He just designed this battle according to people's hearts. For now, the result is not bad, at least it didn't mess up. Dubin led his men to try their best to restrain the patrol army, and ordered the surrendered Black Scorpion gang members to drop their weapons, squat on the ground, and form a circle. When Mason and Himengsha rushed over with a large amount of food, the Black Scorpion gang's base finally restored a little order. As soon as the Black Scorpion appeared, he was shot dead by Charlotte. The leaderless Black Scorpion gang hardly raised any strong resistance. Although dozens of people were killed in the conflict and more than 100 people escaped, there were still 500 or 600 people left. Charlotte dispersed this group of people and stuffed them into the various combat teams under his command. He also distributed the food brought by Mason and Himangsha. When everyone was eating with great interest, he jumped onto a statue in the Black Scorpion station, looked down from above, and said loudly, "I said that the wealth of the Black Scorpion should be distributed to everyone. My old subordinates all know that Mr. Mecklin always keeps his word. After everyone has eaten, you can start collecting wealth. I will ask professionals to evaluate it and exchange it for forks and centimes. According to the efforts made in today's battle, it will be distributed to everyone." Charlotte did not confiscate the property that his subordinates had hidden privately. The things that could be hidden privately were only small items. Slightly larger things could not be hidden privately. After all, this patrol army had little loyalty, and he would not anger this mob for such a small amount of money. If he messed around, it would cause problems. Charlotte's call was welcomed like thunder. After all, no one would dislike the taste of money. Charlotte originally wanted to go all out and pick another big gang, but seeing that this group of people were tired after the excitement, he had to give up this plan. After these people had eaten, Charlotte did not dare to take them back to number 1 Yansun Street. After all, this was a unit with extremely complex members, and many people might get separated on the way back. He asked these subordinates to rest on the spot, and he also chose a room. Charlotte was afraid that something would happen in the middle of the night, so he did not sleep and practiced bloody glory all night. Early the next morning, there was a commotion at the Black Scorpion gang station. After Charlotte woke up, he came out to ask, and it turned out that several gangs that did not go to number 1 Yansun Street yesterday sent people to ask to see him. After yesterday's battle to destroy the Black Scorpion gang, this group of rabble had gained some momentum. No one notified them, but just circled the gang members and asked them to wait for Charlotte to wake up. However, so many people made some noise, and Charlotte was still alarmed. He washed his face, tidied up his appearance a little, and made himself look a little dignified, and then asked someone to bring the gang members over. Among the gang members who came, the most eye-catching one was a man who was a bit older. He was dressed very decently and didn't look like a gang member at all, but from the eyes of others, Charlotte knew that this guy was quite prestigious. The man spoke first and said, "I am Ross Bader from the Bader Chamber of Commerce. As the local Chamber of Commerce in Lucavero District, I am willing to lead the entire Bader Chamber of Commerce to join the patrol army. The 5 largest gangs in Lucavero District are, Lone Wolf Gang, Dark Knight Beast, You Love Brotherhood, the newly destroyed Black Scorpion Gang and Bader Chamber of Commerce. Among them, the Bader Chamber of Commerce is the most special. It is not a gang organization in the conventional sense, but a group of 17 shops that have united to form a security team with gang colors. It rarely conflicts with other gangs and only protects the business safety of the 17 shops. Originally, the Bader Chamber of Commerce did not want to participate in Charlotte's activities and rejected Dubin, but the battle last night had already alarmed all forces. When Ross Bader knew about it, the Black Scorpion Gang was completely destroyed overnight. He did not hesitate to persuade other members of the Chamber of Commerce to come and join him early in the morning. He was afraid that if he acted too late, Charlotte would regard the Bader Chamber of Commerce as the next target. Charlotte didn't expect that the Bader Chamber of Commerce would be so tactful, and said with a smile, "Great, welcome the Bader Chamber of Commerce to join the big family of the City Patrol Army." He glanced at the others and asked, "What about you?" The gang members looked pale and shouted hurriedly, "We are also willing to join the City Patrol Army." Charlotte said to Dubin, "Check to see if there are any gangs in this area who are unwilling to take the initiative to join the City Patrol Army. I will help them join in a decent manner." Chapter 100, Far's Empire Declares War. Charlotte said this lightly, but the gang members were terrified. The destruction of the Black Scorpion Gang yesterday was too shocking. No one could have imagined that the chief of the patrol army in the Lucavero district was so cruel and brutal. The Black Scorpion Gang was also a gang that had been established for more than 10 years, but it didn't even last a night and disappeared. Charlotte originally planned to find his old acquaintance Louis Simi to evaluate the wealth of the Black Scorpion Gang. Since Ross Bud took the initiative to join him, he handed the matter over to the new businessman. He no longer cared about the follow-up. In the next few days, Charlotte did nothing but maintain his diligent work every day. The destruction of the Black Scorpion Gang overnight made the Lone Wolf Gang, the Dark Knight Beast and the Girav Brotherhood much more obedient. Charlotte did not take advantage of the situation to force them, and did not even wipe out several small gangs that were still hesitant. He was trying to digest the forces he had swallowed. It was another Monday, and it was the Empire's payday again. The Fars Empire finally declared war on Baron. This news immediately caused an uproar throughout the Empire. Various newspapers were hotly discussing the upcoming war, but the top leaders remained silent, and it was obvious that they had reached a tacit understanding. The Lucavero District Patrol Army finally ushered in changes. A document from the Central Government Office ordered the Lucavero District Patrol Army to be reorganized into the Free Knights, granted the right to expand, and transferred the original Chief Patrol Lady Mavis to new Chief Patrol. Charlotte, who received the document, felt relieved. When he saw the resume of the new Chief Patrol assigned by the Central Government Office on the document, he suddenly felt 100 flowers in disarray, goddesses flying. The new Chief Patrol of the Lucavero District Patrol Army is a 40th level second-class sergeant. This military service level is theoretically a freshman who has graduated for 1 or 2 years, or even longer. But in fact, the new Chief Patrol is a freshly graduated college student with a very imaginative name, Dorothy Sumini, the crowned goddess of Gorgia University, the cousin of Mecklenburg. Well, Dorothy has graduated and is no longer a student at Gorgias University. She will no longer be the title of the crowned goddess. When Charlotte saw this name, she understood why he graduated as a 41st class first-class clerk, while the other party was a 40th class second-class sergeant, and was able to break the rules to obtain a political identity and become a powerful general patrol. He racked his brains to figure out why his new partner would be Dorothy Sumini. The former crowned goddess of Gorgias University was very efficient. In the afternoon when Charlotte received a document from the General Office of the Central Government, she appeared at number 1 Falcon Street. When this beautiful girl with a pair of blue eyes and a graceful demeanor like a daffodil stood in Charlotte's office, her first words were, "I just want to see your shocked expression." Charlotte spread her hands and asked, "Why did you come to patrol the city army?" Dorothy was very familiar. In Charlotte's office, she found the flower tea, took out a card, put it under the kettle, and soon boiled the water and brewed a cup for herself. Charlotte's eyes were wide open, and she asked, "Is this the card magic of Gorgias University?" Dorothy blew gently on the hot water and answered, "Yes, it is the card magic created by Johann Arthur Conan Doyle, the first president of Gorgias University. This card is a bonfire. It is very convenient to use it to boil some hot water and food in the wild." Although Charlotte was envious, she knew that she no longer had the energy to practice card magic, so she just asked casually, "Dorothy, what level of extraordinary are you?" Dorothy Sumini said, "A 3rd-level card magician, a little stronger than Anne." Charlotte didn't want to continue this topic. With Dorothy's bad character, every word he said might be passed on to Anne's ears, and it would definitely be a modified version with oil and oil. Dorothy held the flower tea and drank it slowly and carefully. It must be said that she is worthy of being the crown goddess of Gorgia University and the cousin of Mecklenburg, the first rose of the empire. Her appearance is almost impeccable and her manners are very elegant. From the perspective of appearance alone, she is flawless. But in terms of personality, Charlotte didn't want to complain. He also poured himself a cup of coffee. He was really not used to the coffee in this world, which was a bit too sour, so he bought a batch of beans, roasted them in a traditional way, and made them charcoal roasted. Although the taste was average and not satisfactory, it was finally palatable. Dorothy's little nose moved slightly and asked, "What kind of coffee is this?" Charlotte gestured, "Do you want to try it?" Dorothy put down the flower tea in his hand, followed Charlotte's brewing steps, added sugar and milk, and heated it slightly with a magic card bonfire. He took a sip and his eyes lit up immediately. "The coffee you got? It's a little bitter, but just the right amount. After adding sugar and milk, it turns into a rich aroma. I've never seen this taste before." Charlotte didn't pretend to be profound, and explained, "I roasted the coffee beans deeply." She also told Dorothy in detail the precautions for roasting coffee beans. Dorothy silently memorized it and asked, "If you open a coffee shop, you will definitely have good business." Charlotte laughed and said, "I would rather open a chain of milk tea shops. This thing is a big business that makes money on Earth, and it is loved by women all over the world." Charlotte thought about many profitable businesses that can be done in the old world. In addition to pharmacies, she also thought about opening a milk tea shop, but the former is an existing business in the old world, and only needs to adjust the goods sold, while the latter is too earth-shattering, and he doesn't know whether the business will be good. Dorothy didn't know what a chain store was, nor did she know what milk tea was. She frowned, thought for a while, and said, Milk and tea don't look good together. This business is a sure loss. Charlotte didn't explain, and asked, Dorothy, are you really going to work? Dorothy put away her magic cards and said, I also brought the soldiers you urgently need, but you seem to have solved this problem yourself. Charlotte then remembered that Madame Mavis mentioned that the Empire would give him a batch of soldiers. Recently, most of his patrol troops who were eating empty salaries have been transferred away, but because a group of prisoners came and local gang members were recruited, he didn't think about it for a while. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.